Good morning, coaches, and welcome to the first of our series of webinars on school sport and where is it going. Today, welcome everybody that's all come through. Welcome everybody that's here to watch and to visit us for the first time. It's actually great to have so many replies back to our webinar. Just a first thing is that a couple of our coaches have actually got problems with load shedding. So we are going to send a link during the week of replays of each one of these presentations. We also want to call out to Jaco Lotto, one of our coaches, for unfortunately his twin brother Martin passed away this morning due to the coronavirus. So condolences to him and best wishes to all other coaches that are there and everybody else who's suffering from the coronavirus and what leads back to the coronavirus. Okay, so let's start off. Whilst we're waiting for other coaches to join, we've got a lot of coaches, and not only coaches, we've got media personalities, we've got administrators in sport, we've got a lot of people that are communicating with us and that are part of the webinar. Just whilst we're all waiting for other people to join, do you mind if I just send you a quick poll just to find out where everybody is from? So we're just checking to see where everybody is from, and so far, sure, got a lot of replies coming back from Gauteng. Welcome everybody from Gauteng. Welcome to our webinar. Western Cape, a lot of replies from Western Cape too. It's great to see so many people coming off and coming from all over the country. We've got people from Northern Cape, Limpopo, Eastern Cape, and Mpumalanga, KZN. Pretty much all the provinces. We've actually got people coming from all the provinces. This is great. As I said beforehand, it's not only coaches that are here. We've got people from different kinds of administration within sport. We've got people that are coming from the media side, some journalists. Let me also ask you a second question whilst we're here. Second question is, what sports do you coach? Now, we do have people that have come through from various different kinds of sports. Both we've got athletics, cricket, rugby, but then we've also had some interesting ones, replies back from archery, from gaming sports, from cue sports too. It's quite interesting to see the different array of people, and you can select multiple sports if you are interested. Just give the guys a couple more minutes to come and join us. A couple of people are running a little bit late, but we won't wait too long because we've got quite a busy agenda today. It's actually amazing that 9 o'clock during the lockdown seems like it's quite early in the morning. But for most of your coaches, you're already halfway through your day. You've already set up, you've got half your matches already finished for the day. By 12 o'clock, the day's done for a lot of coaches on a Saturday. Okay, I think it's time for us let's get started. I'm just going to share my screen. Hold on a sec. All right, so why are we all here? Well, we're all here because the whole sporting industry is struggling. Everybody in sport is finding it very difficult to take part in sport. We'd love to say that the sporting industry is carrying on, but we know due to the lockdown we can't play sport, we can't do a lot of sport, especially when it comes to school sports. We also don't know when the school sport is coming back. So we've heard various ideas behind school sport and when school sport is coming back. Some people say that it's coming back in October, November. Some people say it's only coming back next year. Even for your private coaches, they're not 100% sure when school sport can actually come back properly and when their kids can participate. And then finally, coaching is also an ever-evolving process. So a coach can never know too much. You've got ideas, you think, your school sport's working out very well for you, things are going well for your team, but you always have to improve because somebody's always going to try and look to get the edge on you. So coaches are always studying, always learning to try and get to learn more about their own sports. Also here, hopefully through our webinars, we are going to have people talking about various aspects in sport, including some of the sponsors, some people that are coming from the sales side of sport, where they're going to be selling equipment and things in future webinars. So there could be an opportunity to find a way to actually make money, even though as a coach you can't work at the moment. And then, yeah, as I said, coaches are always looking for ways to improve themselves. And then finally, in that little picture on the right-hand side, we are all here for our kids. We wouldn't be into coaching if we weren't here for the kids. We didn't love the kids. But with the coronavirus, it's not been all doom and gloom. We've had a couple of sponsors that have actually come aboard to sponsor sport. So, for example, KFC's renewed their sponsorship in KFC Mini Cricket. Engine are sponsoring Get Into Rugby. And I'm sure there are a lot more sponsors that are coming aboard. Yes, it's not as much as what we normally have. Some sponsors are cutting back, but there are sponsors that are coming aboard. And if you want to, you can actually send me little messages telling me what sponsors you know have come aboard during the coronavirus period. So who are we as a company? I'll go through this quite quickly because Kassey will go through it in more detail a little bit later on. But we are a PR company that's involved mainly in sport. We do PR strategies. We have great relationships with all the media outlets, including your regional media, your community media. We speak a lot to the community media guys. We find something that will actually suit you as a school or a sporting body where we can actually get your stories out there. We do social media strategies for companies and for schools. We do media training, which Kassey will discuss in a lecture in her speech. We do event management. And finally, something that we've got into quite recently is project management and the construction of sporting facilities. We've done mainly cricket facilities up to now, but we are able to actually get into other sports. So some of the projects that we've been involved in, I'll go through these quite quickly because this is more on Kassey's presentation, but we've been involved in the Craven Week. We've been involved in Kaimajula Week. We've been involved in Kamatsepa Schools Cup, the Non-Nations Cup. So as you can see, like T20 schools, cricket, football, rugby. We've done local and international. We've done school sports and international sports. We've even done things like the Man City matches. So why are we hosting these webinars? Well, because of all the experience we've got in all these different sports, we've got a huge knowledge of sport. We've spoken to a lot of coaches, biokineticists, physiotherapists, different people within sport. And there's no better way to use your knowledge than to share it with others. That's at least our motto. We love sharing our knowledge with others. And we're enabling others through this platform to also share their knowledge. So some of the people that are here, the coaches or the administrators, or I see we've even got, as I said, physiotherapists, media guys, can also contact us and they can also speak in one of the future webinars that we are going to host. As I already said, we don't know when school sport will be back. And we just want to help everybody in the sporting industry. That's coaches, media, administrators, medical staff, etc. And finally, as I've said before, coaches are always keen to learn. So today's speakers are Greg Hurvitz. He's our guest speaker today. Greg is quite well known in South Africa. He's been involved in, especially up here in Joburg. He's done a lot of rugby, cricket. He's been involved in netball, and now he lives in Australia. And he is club ambassador for Southeast Victoria football. So he's got over 260 clubs, if I'm not mistaken, that report to him. And he's also, at the same time, he's gone back into the actual coaching side of sport with coaching the Maccabi Ajax Cricket Club. I am your host today, and I'll discuss a little bit about the power and responsibilities of a coach. And then Kassey will finish off this afternoon, this morning at least, with interviewing strategies. We were at a conference at the end of last year where Malibunga Maketa, he was actually still the Proteas assistant coach. He got up and he spoke to a group of coaches in Port Elizabeth. And he said that whenever a coach goes to work, they're in a position where they can change someone's life. Now, truthfully, I can actually stop my presentation here because I think this statement of his really embodies what a coach does. Malibongwe is phenomenal. He actually understands that changing somebody's life is so important. And yes, I mean, coaches do the technical side, they do the strategy side, they do have a lot of coaching mechanisms that are in the repertoire, but changing a person's life is probably the most fundamental part of being a coach. Here are some attributes of a coach. I went into the LOC and IOC, sorry, and I saw this list that they had, and I actually added some bits and pieces on the list. Now, I'm not going to speak through every single one of the points because I think a lot of them are kind of self-explanatory. However, I just want to discuss one part, and that's the mentorship/parent part of a coach. Now, this is extremely important here in South Africa. As I've done a bit of research on it, and I've seen an article talking about that, South Africa's got 60% of South African children have got absent father figures. 40% of South African children have single mother parents who are the single owners of the family. And sometimes in this case, they've got large families and you've got one person in the family or multiple families all connected where one person's earning money to provide for the whole family. Now, the world average in single mother families is 15%, so we're far beyond that. And no matter how hard this person tries, this parent tries, because there's also single fathers that are running a family, no matter how hard they try, they don't have the time because they're working, they're trying to provide for the family, they don't have the time to actually be their parent figure, no matter how hard they try. So this falls under the coach. Coach can help, can teach various aspects of life's lessons through playing sport, through coaching and sport, and teachers, because a lot of teachers are on this webinar. Teachers do exactly the same thing, where they come through and they talk about, they are mentors for the kids. They talk about problems the kids have. They become the person the kid can actually communicate with or approach. And that's the same with the coach. A coach is exactly the same position where kids can come through. They can learn lessons like how to support each other because a coach is supportive. They can learn how to be respectful of each other because a coach is respectful of them. They can learn lots of little things, including discipline, etc. So a coach is extremely important in South Africa. And well, in the world in general, but specifically here in South Africa, with a lot of kids looking for a father or a mother figure or a parent figure. So here's a bit of difference between a school and a pro coach. Firstly, there's no one-size-fits-all game strategy in school sports. You have a team, you've got your strategy for this year, and what happens? You get a new bunch of kids that come up. And you have to look at those kids and you find the kids every season. You have to find a new strategy for that season because you've got to look at all the strengths and weaknesses each year of the new kids that you've got. Now, in a lot of international teams, you'll see a coach that's got one style of football or one style of rugby or one style of whatever sport they play, netball, whatever it is. And they say that style fits everybody. And what happens is that they lose a player because the player retires or moves to another club or whatever it is. And what they do is that they go out and they look for a replacement for that exact same player's role. Now, truthfully, I've seen it like, for example, if you look at Cricket South Africa with Jacques Kallis. When Jacques Kallis retired, Cricket South Africa tried hard to find a replacement for Jacques Kallis. Now, there's only one Jacques Kallis. And in the future, when Kagiso Rabada retires, there's only one Kagiso Rabada. You can't replace that player for another like player. Maybe they might have some similar traits, but like, for example, Jacques Kallis, it's so difficult to find somebody that's like him. And they throw around names about people that are very similar to that guy. But actually, you can't replace him. You actually got to look at what you've got and use your resources to the best of your ability. And that's what a school coach has to do every single season. There are, however, basic procedures that you can put in place to make sure that your teams, your schools, your teams, your players can achieve their goals. Now, Greg Hurvitz will go into this in more detail. He'll discuss procedures that you can put in place. So I won't go into this, but there are things that you can put in place, general kind of procedures. So even though the kids change, the strategy changes, your general procedure can be like a generic one that'll also adapt in time because you learn more things through more webinars, and listening to other coaches and doing more research, but you can get basic procedures in place. But the most important thing is that a coach's job is not only about the top athlete, especially a schools coach. It's about all the athletes. So you look at school, you've got your first team, you've got your under 14Gs. The under 14G player is also important. The growth, the benefit of that player is extremely important. That player's parents pay the same school fees as the kid who is playing first in the first side. So he also deserves a bit of attention. So I'll give you a scenario. Now, this is a scenario where I've taken kind of similar kind of characteristics or similar upbringings that some kids have gone through in the future. And I've actually used a modern team, an adult team to actually explain this kind of scenario. But this is very similar to what a lot of coaches have, where you get a kid, for example, from a more affluent family. I'm not saying a rich family, so a family that's okay, that's financially stable, with a lot of family support. And I'm very much generalizing when I go through these three points, these three different kinds of kids. The kid thinks the kid is invincible, it's got massive self-belief, and it's a great kid to have in your team. And a lot of coaches enjoy this kind of kid because you can base a strategy on this kid. This kid is the kind of kid that's always got school kit, that eats 3 meals a day, that if you need to raise money to go and do a camp, this kid can raise the money, can get it from his parents. The kid's got clothing, got shoes to play every game, got transport to all the games. This is the ideal kind of kid to have. However, this is not the only kid we've got. We've got to deal with all different kinds of kids. So the second kid we've got is a kid from a large poor family, single income family. The main money earner, however, in this family is not able to work. Now this, unfortunately, in South Africa is a lot of our kids in South Africa. We've got a lot of coaches here that come from other tournaments that we are part of, where we speak with the very low LSM. These kids don't get 3 meals a day. These kids really, really struggle. These kids walk miles to get to school. These kids really, really struggle in life in general, but they love sport. And as a coach, you can bring them into the team. They can play exceptionally well on the side. They can really grow on the side. The third kid is that eccentric kid. Now, I've got a lot of friends of mine at school that were like this. And I thought some of them towed the line. They seemed more like the top kid, the more affluent kid with a lot of family support. And yes, they had the family support, all that, but they had opinions of their own. They would argue a little bit with the coaches. The coach would say this, they would do that. They always made sure that they enjoyed life at the fullest. They're a little bit different kind of kids in that sense. And they were very creative kids. They had different ways of dealing with life. Now, at school, I had kids that were like that. And they, when I saw them after school and, 10, 20 years later when we had our school reunions, these guys told us how much they struggled at school because they weren't allowed to be themselves. They weren't allowed to express themselves on the sports field. They also couldn't express themselves in the classroom. And you want these kids to be able to express themselves and be the best people that they can be. And there is a place for any kid because they all got just as much talent. All three of these kids have got phenomenal talent. And you never know when you're going to find that diamond. But even if you don't find that diamond as a phenomenal player, these kids still deserve your full attention, that you can grow them as a person. And if that kid wants to become something else, I mean, I've got a friend of mine who at school, he struggled at school. He played exceptionally well at school, at sport. He was a provincial, and I think he played national hockey, if I'm not mistaken, at the school sport level. But he went off and he's become one of the top artists in New York. He's a very creative kid. Now, he couldn't do that at school because he was squashed, because he wasn't allowed to be that kid that he would like to be. He wasn't allowed to speak out a bit. And he was restricted in what he could do at school. And now that he's outside of school, he can grow extremely well. In my case, I had a little bit of a similar situation to this in the sense that, as you guys saw, I played rugby in Italy. At school, we had coaches that would come through, especially in my under 15 year. The coach would come through, he would push me around a bit to try and get me to be aggressive. He would, totally squash me as a person. And eventually I went from playing A team to B team to C team and struggled my way back to the A side. But I didn't want to play because this guy would come in and cluck me and push me around and say, "Oh, you've got to get aggressive, you've got to get into the game." Because he saw other kids were a little bit, or he as a player, that's how he grew, that's how he got into the game. Meanwhile, for me, I withdrew into myself. I went off to Italy, started playing rugby in Italy. The coaches gave me their full support. I felt confident in my game. I could talk to the coaches. I had an opinion in the team. And suddenly, at 17 years old, I was playing for the Italian under-19 side. I didn't continue too much more in my career in rugby, but I had other interests in life. But I did have the possibilities. Now, I know some guys are turning around and say, but that's Italian rugby compared to South African rugby, and the standard is very high in South African rugby. But the fact remains is that I did play far beyond what I could play when I was at my specific school with my specific coaches. And now a lot of this has changed, but there still can be a bit of a problem in South Africa. So let me give you the example of these kind of kids, and hopefully you enjoy this. I'm so sorry about that. Said at the end there that, you know, he loved playing. It was just a dream of his, just a dream of all kids to do well and play internationally or play a high level of sport. I mean, it was more than a dream. Even this kid here could actually achieve and could get to do huge things in life. And the last kid was an eccentric kid. Now, Dennis Rodman really battled to get further contracts in the NBA, and they still managed to find a place for him. There was a place in the Chicago Bulls for him. And his interesting comment was that both Scotty and Michael, they were from totally different kind of backgrounds and completely different kinds of people, respected him, understood him, and had a place for him in their team. And that's the same with their coach. He found a way to make all of them work. He'd let Dennis Rodman have his periods where he needed to get it all out of his system and then move on from there. So I thought that was just very interesting, just looking at those guys. And we do have those kind of kids in each one of our teams and at different levels. They might not be as phenomenal as these guys are. They might be our kid in our 14Gs, but you can still develop that child and improve that child and work on that child as an individual. So types of school coaching, considering what we've just discussed now, I've kind of identified three kinds of coaches, very generic kinds of coaches. And this is a very generic kind of way of talking about it, about these kind of coaches. But you first have your professional coach. So this is your coach that's not a teacher at the school, a coach that's been brought in, or a coach from an external coach that has been asked to coach a kid, coach a kid outside the school because the parents feel like that the kid needs extra coaching or needs to take the kid to another level. So this coach has to achieve at all costs, or this coach will lose their jobs. So if you consider the professional coach within the school, this coach has got certain people that this coach has to report to, gets quite a decent salary, and get told that you have to perform or you lose your job. Or the other side is that, and an example I was thinking of, that you've got a swimmer that has got a gala coming up, and actually a child, let's say for example the child can't swim, and a gala's coming up, and the parents decide this kid needs to be a swimmer, takes this kid to an external coach, says this kid's got a gala in a week's time or a month's time, I want the kid to win the gala, you got to coach the kid. So but in both scenarios, if the kid or the team doesn't achieve their goals, then that coach will lose their job, or that parent will pull the kid out of that external coaching position, or away from the external coaching coach, and put the kid to another coach. So they'll lose that job. So the focus sometimes, even though the coach, because all the coaches, I believe, start off with belief in the kids and growth of the child, and this is what they really want to do and help individuals, sometimes the development of the child is not as important as a result, or they lose focus in the development of the child. Now, as I say, I am generalizing. There are a lot of coaches that prove this wrong. And when I give you the example later, I'll give you an example of two coaches that actually prove this wrong. But the focus is that sometimes can get lost. And sometimes the school says that 9 out of 10 result is not good enough. they want 10 out of 10 results, and maybe even that's not even good enough for this coach. A lot of pressure gets put on the coach. So the focus sometimes gets pushed away. And as I said, I am generalizing more into the career of the coach, and said, because the coach needs to get paid instead of the players. But some of the benefits of the coach, for example, are that the coach can concentrate on the sporting code as a whole, learn as much as possible, learn about coaching techniques, grow the program themselves, but then also look at the sporting code in the entire school. So from your grade ones to your matrics, they can look at it, they can get into a system, they can assist all other coaches that need assisting. My second and third type of coach, this person can really help these guys grow their program. They can bounce ideas off this coach. This coach is great to have if your school can afford a coach like this. Great to have a professional coach in, because they can benefit your school in so many ways. So some of the ideas that I've got to actually help this coach is that if you get a professional coach, and get that coach to partner with teacher coaches. So your teacher coach, I'll explain to you in the next slide, but your teacher coach knows a little bit more about the kids, because they teach the kids, so they've got an education in teaching, but I'll explain it all later. But partner with the teacher coach, where this professional coach can get more in line with the kids. They can communicate with parents and other teachers. Sometimes communicating with parents is not easy, but you can come up with a plan where you can say to the parents, this is what we're planning, this is what we want to do for the season, this is how we want to grow your child, this is how we want to develop your child, this is the plan for the school. And go to the teacher and say, listen, I've got an issue with this one child. What's going on in this child's life? So the teachers and parents can assist this coach extremely. It'll also allow free this coach up to allow long-term plans for the school. So the coach can sit down and give the school a 10-year plan, a 5-year plan, saying, this is what we want to do within the program, within the school. This is how we want to grow the sport within the school. And this will allow all the kids to develop under this program. And as I said, they can oversee other kids, other teams. They can look at other teams. They can assist other coaches out within the school. Your second type of coach that I've classified is your teacher coach. Now, this is a qualified teacher. This is a coach that's a teacher that teaches during the day, during the morning, and coaches in the afternoon. Sometimes this coach often starts off with huge amounts of energy. And sometimes you see them when they're in their late 50s or their 60s, where they're feeling very negative, they're feeling a bit downcast, sometimes even earlier than that, because sometimes they don't feel like they're taken seriously. So you say, okay, well, you're only a teacher coach. If you get 1 out of 10, you win, 1 out of 10 games, that's okay. That kind of coach is in a school that doesn't take sport very seriously. And that coach often feels unappreciated. However, that coach is very important. So the next part is that coach there can be expected to perform as well as the professional coach, but doesn't get the same resources. So this coach gets told, okay, well, you are a teacher anyway in the school. Come and coach our teams. Come and coach our kids. But you must do as well as another coach that focus specifically on sport, but we don't want to give you the money because you already got a salary. You're doing it out of the best interest of love for the kids, and you don't get the same kind of resources as what a professional coach might get. Then the last one is that this coach is often overloaded between schoolwork and coaching. There are a lot of demands nowadays on teachers at the school level. There's a lot of government courses that these coaches have to do, plus and then in the afternoon they have to go and do the coaching. So they can't sometimes focus on future development of their programs or studying the sport as what a professional coach would like. So as I said, this is a qualified teacher. So this person here has got a degree where they actually know about kids and how kids work and how to get the best out of kids. So this person is very, very important in coaching structures. This coach understands the strengths and weaknesses of the kids, and they can take it onto the sporting field and help a child out. Now, I've got a lot of stuff now in quite a few of our programs, especially our primary school programs. When you talk to a coach, they'll say, well, we actually had this kid that was really struggling. This kid had low self-esteem, was battling to make friends. Then we took this kid to the sporting field, and through sport and just playing sport and having fun with the other kids, suddenly it broke down the barriers between this kid and the other kids. And they got friends, they suddenly got lots of friends, and suddenly the academics started improving, and this kid became, a lot more confident, started doing a lot better. So a teacher coach will actually understand this and know how this works amongst kids. And this kind of coach is also interested in the individual. So it looks at the individual, looks at what works with that individual, especially through that example that I gave previously. So I believe that this coach sometimes needs more investment in them, needs to be given, especially in the case when they are not given the same resources as another coach, but expected to receive get the same results. A little bit of investment to this coach. Give this coach the opportunity to also grow themselves and do as well as what they can within their program. Understand that this coach has other duties, and try and help this coach, meet both duties as a teacher and as a coach themselves. And allow the coach to look at ways to assist these kids personally. Now, especially if this coach has got a professional coach above them, and my third kind of coach to assist them, this coach can actually sit with each kid and learn more about each kid, especially in the classroom space and taking the classroom space out into the field. This coach can actually assist all kids personally. The third kind of coach is your volunteer coach. This coach gets the leftover kids. So the kids that play in the lower teams, the kids that maybe not as interested in sport, this coach gets the donkey work, so goes around and picks up the cones, the balls, the whatever else afterwards. And this coach often doesn't know the most up-to-date coaching techniques. So this volunteer coach for me is the coach that's an ex-pupil at the school, a parent, a grandmother. And some of the sports that we're involved in, you get grandmothers that are coaching the kids, or a grandfather that's coaching the kids, or an aunt and an uncle. So this person comes in with absolute huge love of the kids to go and assist their coaches and assist the coaching plans. This coach is phenomenal because it's got a personal connection with individuals. So you can think of it, a grandmother or a parent coming through. They know the kids. They know that kid that would be their kid, and they know all the kids around that kid. And they can talk to them. They've got a nice, really individual connection with these kids. They're always willing to assist. They've got so much strength and so much love for the kids. They're passionate about the sports and the kids. And they're able to get to kids to open up to them and do one-on-one talking with the kids. Now, what that means is that if you've already got the school space where you've got your teacher coach that tries to look at the kids and assist the kids in the school space, but that's sometimes quite a formal kind of setting where some of the kids are withdrawn in that space, that they feel like they can't speak, they can't open themselves up, so they're just drawn to their little corner. Then you take them into the sporting field where they open up a little bit more because it's a fun environment. However, once again, they respect the elders, they're quieter towards their coaches. But the volunteer coach, being a parent or even an ex-pupil with a similar age group, can associate themselves very, very well with these kids. And they can talk to them and open up to these kids. And these kids will open up and talk to them about various aspects within their game, the various problems that they are facing. And then the last thing about them is, how can you help these guys out? Well, you can help them out by investing in the coaching techniques that they've got. Assist them with coaching techniques. So let's say this volunteer coach gets one of the weaker sides, the kids that battle a bit in their sport. To help them, give them a little bit of coaching, invest in their coaching techniques. I don't say give them, like in cricket, you got your level 1, 2, 3, 4. Don't give them a level 3. They don't necessarily need a level 3, but if they go to level 1, they can do the basics to assist the other coaches, the other two coaches, and the basics to give the kids a good enough platform to actually work from. The next one is to use them to find out how the kids work and what makes them tick. This is quite helpful for the first two kinds of coaches, because when those first two can't approach the kid and don't know how the kid works and they've got frustrations with them, they can always turn to the volunteer coach and say, listen, call this kid aside, have a chat to this kid. It really, really will help them out. And make these coaches feel important. They're doing just as good a role as anybody else. Make them feel important, make them feel like what they actually do helps the kids out. And it actually takes very little to make them feel important, because they've got such a passion in the sport and in the kids. So now I've got an example here of 3 types of coaches. The one actually, Morgan, he works for Cricket South Africa. He has not celebrated a birthday in 26 years with his family, because what he does is he organizes the Kai Majula Week every year, and he gives absolutely everything for the benefit of the kids. So let me play this clip for you guys.
for me, I think it's important that the boys understand that this is a platform to showcase your talent. And it's fine if you don't make it here, make it into an SA schools team or SA courts team. But there's so much opportunity going from here there. So all I can say to these boys is encourage them to just keep working hard and know that this is not the end of the world.
I got these girls, they're excited, positive, optimistic about what's coming. And in the past 2 weeks, we've went from the basics, trying to get the basics right technically, and actually get them get us as coaches to understand who's best where, in terms of team dynamics. And but right now, all I can say is that they are improving. They are getting the concepts in, and it's not easy trying to cram so much, in less than 2 months, but our main focus and objective has been clear. It's to try and get them to be to improve technically, and then look at their size and look at their individual skills, and try and work and see if we can get them to play to their strengths. They're kids, and we need to maintain that element of fun.
Yes, it helps a lot. It helps a lot because the kids, you know them individually, you know their strength, you know their weaknesses, and most importantly, you know their background, their family background, where they are coming, the challenges that they are facing, the struggles that they are facing at home, So when you coach them and you ignore their family background, you are going to have a problem. You are not going to make it. You must know them. You must know where they come from, who they are staying with at home.
The tournament always starts on the 16th of December, and my birthday is on the 18th of December. So I'm always at the week. But at the same time, cricket, I've developed a family in cricket. And to be around people that love the game, that share the same hobbies as you, that serve the same passion as you, and also being at the same venue, that's more than enough. And I'm always lucky a family always comes down, they can share part of the celebrations. But just being with the cricketing family on your birthday is a great and wonderful opportunity.
So I've had the luxury and to have obviously Graham October supporting me. Gershon Rob also plays a massive role. They do a lot more than just look at my cricket. They tap into my personal life and they make sure that I've got everything in order. In my personal life, they take care of me financially, they take care of me emotionally. So everything, they're basically just massive role models in my life. And to work with someone like Gersh, who was a fantastic first-class bowler as well, is also a privilege. And I'm really glad to have him in my corner as well. But those two have really been phenomenal in driving me and getting me to here to this point.
Just so you know who the different people are. So the first one is Rowan Richards. Now he's a professional player, ex-professional player that actually retired last season. And now he's been taken into Queen's College where he's assisting all the coaches from each age group with their kids and growing their kids. So he comes through and he looks at all the kids and he believes that his experience and what he learned as a player, his change of experience, he can actually give that to the kids and grow them as individuals. The second one is Sibusisa from Wits. He was given that impossible task of 1 week to prepare kids to play an international tournament. Kids from a township here in Joburg, a very, very poor township here in Joburg. And he was given a very difficult position where he had to develop these kids in 1 week to go and play an international tournament where he's playing against, it was a girls' side against high performance teams from Roma, Barcelona, from different kinds of massive sporting clubs with huge resources. And he did look at the technical side, naturally, and the tactical side, but he looked at each one of the kids as individuals and saw how you can actually grow them. And he managed to do that in 1 week. The kids went overseas and they had a phenomenal time. They learned so much about going overseas and playing. The next coach, he's a coach from Limpopo. Now with him, it is quite interesting because he talks about how he can take the information that he learns about a kid at school and put it into the sporting field. Now, there's a specific kid that they actually found as a street child. The school found this kid on the streets. They approached him, they tried to find his parents, they assisted him. They brought that kid into the school. They started teaching him, they gave him accommodation because they couldn't find his parents. He's an orphan child. And now he actually stays, that specific coach fosters that child now. He stays with the coach mentors him, assists him. He's got him into the school program now. He's studying very well. And funny enough, he was the best player in the team. Sundowns were there to watch the tournament, saw this little kid, and they've earmarked him. They've left him at the school so he can carry on playing at the school, but he gets invited to Sundowns camp so he can learn more about his football. So you can see how much they're helping and assisting an individual. This kid would have been still stuck in the street, still battling to eat. Hopefully he would still have been alive. I mean, who knows? And they managed to get this kid into a system where he can flourish and grow as an individual, and now he's got lots of friends at the school. It's great. The last one that I actually did, then you got Morgan talking naturally, as I said to you beforehand, about his birthday, always giving back to the kids, and that's how important he finds working with kids. But the last guy I thought I'd actually add in was a bit of a surprise one, I thought, his name is Sia Plaiki. He's a S-under-19 cricket player. He's a phenomenal player for Western Province. He's actually playing now. He's actually been really put into the Western Province senior side. He's a fast bowler, and he comes from a very, very poor background, very similar to the previous kid that we were talking about, excepting that he does have his mother, and his mother tries so hard to bring up him and his brother, but she can't give them 3 meals a day. Now, both his coaches that he mentioned, both Graham and Gershwin, Graham found him whilst he was still in the mini cricket phase, brought him into cricket, assisted him. Gershwin's now his higher level coach. But they've seen him, they've seen how he's grown, they've seen how to help him. They've put him into, if I'm not mistaken, at Rondebosch High School, where he can study, he can get a proper education. He's got a bursary there. They've really looked at him as an individual. To tell you the truth, Graham October's gone out and actually paid, given his mother money for food, so she could feed both her kids on weekends when Persia goes home. He's made sure that he's got kids. This is the kind of level that some coaches can get up to. Now, it's not always easy for all coaches, but some coaches really take it to the extreme where they can actually help this kid out financially, physically, everything that they can do. So to do this chat, I've gone through and we've gone and looked at various books, lots of different books. Some of these books have been suggested by other people. At the end of the webinar, and later on, I'll send you this link that you see at the bottom there, which helps you get into contact with all 3 of the speakers that we've got. But 3 of the books I thought that I'd highlight. Now, there's many books, and I'm not going to highlight them all. But the first one I found was quite interesting. The book Legacy by James Kerr was fantastic, all about the All Blacks and the culture of the team and the way of life of the side. I thought that was really fascinating. I learned a lot from that book. Then this is something that my friend Tim Goodenough, I'm sure a lot of you guys know him as a sports psychologist and as a high performance coach. This is one of the books that Tim often talks about, and he actually advised me to read. He's got a series that if you go to Udemy, you've got a couple of lessons that you can do with Tim. He's fantastic. He's unbelievable, this man. And he suggested this book to me, fantastic for any aspect of life. The third one, I thought, well, let's give a South African example of a book that helps. Now, this is a brand new book that's just come out. And I know it speaks about the influence of love and business, but actually these 21 laws of winning with relationships apply to anything. So across the board. Justin just knows very well how to sell. So he knows that if you put love and business in something, you'll sell books. But truthfully, what he has to do in his book, what he talks about is fantastic to help you break barriers, to deal with people, to deal with your coaches, to deal with kids. Kassey and I actually were in one of his seminars last year, where he actually went through these 21s, he did every single one of these laws with us prior to actually releasing his book. It was fantastic, really, really interesting. So these are just 3 books. You will get an email later on or during the week where we'll give you this link at the bottom again. It'll with work at the moment. So he was meant to do this live. We wanted to do it live, but he's actually doing it. We recorded it during the week so he could actually talk to us about his program, what his ideas are. Of course, their outbreak is a fraction of what we'll actually talk about when we, from our side, we look at what we've got as our viruses and stuff. But enjoy Greg's presentation, and I see that there are some questions that have come through during the break. During my speech, I will answer some of those questions. We will have at the end of the seminar, for those coaches that are still able to speak, to wait around, we will deal with some of those questions. Kassey and I will answer some of those questions for you. For Greg, I will send you that link again. You can ask him questions. He will post answers to the questions on his YouTube channel, and if you want to speak to you directly, we will send you the link that you can talk to the guy.
Hey everybody, my name is Greg Hurvitz. It's really, really cool to be able to be with you today. I am a South African, but I present to you from Melbourne, Australia. I've had a passion for sports coaching and the power of sports coaching for many, many years. And it's really just great to be able to share with like-minded people some thoughts that I have, and hopefully, even if you take one thing out of the presentation today and you're able to make it your own and able to mold it into something that makes your coaching better, then we've done our jobs more and more each time. And I really just appreciate everybody being part of this. It's an amazing experience, and obviously with COVID-19 and the amount of online content that's now available, it's really becoming, if not already, our new normal. So it's really really great to be with you today, and I just want to thank Shawn and his team for making this happen, and I'm sure you'll all be very grateful once this is all done. One of the things that really has always struck me with coaching, and I think those that are well involved in coaching will always appreciate that it's an ever-evolving scenario. Coaching is from 1 week to the next week, from 1 month, from 1 year to the next year, 1 season to the next season. Coaching is always evolving. It's always changing. And I suppose from that perspective, it makes it a bit challenging, but how exciting is it that we're always shifting and we're always with different opportunities. Now, over a period of time of working at different levels of coaching, the actual coaching itself to the administration of coaching to the strategy of coaching, I've kind of gained a little bit of insight over the last 25 odd years. And I have this kind of pet sort of phrase or maybe issue, if you want to call it, and that is that coaching is both an art and a science. And I know that a lot of us as coaches over a period of time get caught up predominantly in the science aspect of it, and we want to make sure that we're across all physical aspects of what coaching means, which is fine, and hopefully I'll be able to present that, that side of it to you. But certainly there's an art to coaching, and you will, hopefully get a sense of what that side of it is. And so I felt that it was necessary when Shawn spoke to me about the idea and the concept of this presentation, to present something that actually connected science and art, and maybe just share it from that perspective. And so was born the science to the art of coaching. And I want to go through what those things mean to me. And again, I think it's important coaches take on board that coaching belongs to each individual. It's something that is uniquely yours, your recipes, your ingredients, and certainly the outcomes that happen around you. Those are things that are very unique to you. And that's why the ability to share all this information is so appreciated, because each person who goes away from this presentation is going to take something different out of something that's happened today. And I think that's one of the best things about this. And I think don't ever be protective of information that you learn on the job. A very good friend of mine in South Africa, who's now the CEO of Gauteng Cricket, John O'Leafwright, once told me that his one of his acronyms, or I suppose an acronym is a 3-letter, but this one was 4, which was CASE, which was copy and steal everything. And it was really meant in the most positive sense. And it was we were doing a coaching forum together. And it's about making available information. I certainly don't have any patent or any trademark on the information I'm about to share with you. It's available on so many platforms across the internet. You can access a lot of this. And sometimes it's just nice to be in a presentation where some of the stuff gets packaged nicely for you maybe triggers a few things for you. So don't ever be overprotective of information. My advice to many coaches and to all of you today is to make available as much information as you can to all your colleagues and peers and friends as much as possible. Be open to sharing. And I think what you'll find is the more open you are to sharing, the more available you're going to be to take aboard information that comes your way. So really, if I can encourage everybody to really be open and share. So without further ado, when we go through it, I'm going to open up the presentation with a video. It is a 6-minute video, and I say that because I've done, I don't know, 100, 200, 300 of these types of presentations over the last years to different sets of forums. And even though my presentation as such grows and changes almost every time that I do it, this video sums up coaching for me from so many different angles. And I want to open up the presentation with this video because I think by watching this and by hearing what I've got to say after it, you're going to be able to put a lot of things together. There won't be, that's the only video in the presentation. And yeah, you'll just, we'll go through some stuff. And as Shawn alluded, although I'm not here live with you today, and I really appreciate Shawn accommodating me in that sense, there is social media channels that you can contact me on, and Shawn will always be able to connect you to me if you want to have a discussion or disagree. Or definitions in terms of sport and coaching, I always find that trying to define coaching is, and Shawn and potentially a good friend of ours, Theo, will potentially smile at this, but when someone asks you to define leadership or define what a manager is, everyone's got a different definition. I've always acknowledged good definitions around leadership, but there's no one definition that says that's leadership, or there's no one definition that separates leadership and management. There's different ones. And coaching is pretty much exactly the same. But the catch here is that you need to find a definition for yourself. It needs to be yours, and it's going to be yours because that's what you're going to build your coaching philosophy on. And your coaching philosophy, why, when it comes to coaching, why do I, and then you've got to finish the sentence for yourself. Why do I wake up in the morning and want to coach? Why do I work at the school that I work at to coach the sport that I do? Why do I work at Hamilton's Rugby Club or UCT or Potch or King Edwards or Paul Boys? Why do I do what I do? What do I get out of it? And so I want to define, because the presentation is, for me, the science and the art of coaching, I want to define what these things are. And these are definitions that I found online. And again, you may have different definitions, and that's okay. So the definition of science is the intellectual and practical activity encompassing the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation and experiment. Now, when you read that, if you don't get a sense of your coaching world, then I would go as far as to say you're probably not coaching properly, and you might want to consider giving up, because every word in that definition of science speaks to something that we need to be doing whilst we are in the action of coaching. All right? The definition of art, as you can all read there, the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination, typically in a visual form such as a painting or sculpture, producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty and emotional power. Now, the only part there that we obviously can potentially say that doesn't apply to us is where it talks about a painting or sculpture. But the expression or the application of human creative skill and imagination, producing works of art to be appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power, how is that not sports coaching? In my opinion, it absolutely is 100% sports coaching. And you can see, as far as I'm concerned, that between the definitions of science and art, there is almost the definition of coaching. So what is the definition of coaching? Again, this is going to be something that belongs is unique to everybody. But simply, coaching is a process that aims to improve performance and focuses of the individual for maximum improvement and benefit to the team in the here and now, keeping one eye clearly on building a process. Coaching is about unlocking a person's potential to maximize their own performance, and it's helping them to learn rather than teaching them. You need, what I would suggest to many coaches is that you would need to go through these three definitions, and you need to be able to shape your own circumstance, your own environment into what these definitions can mean to you. Okay, it's very important that you find a meaning and a reason to you. Okay, if we move on, we need to work out really what is important. Now, there's lots of things that are important, okay? But the real focus in coaching should always be, as far as I'm concerned, in the people that we're coaching. The sport is the vehicle. We need to make great people. So many coaches. I'm sure many of you, certainly from my perspective, if I reflect on successful teams, then I would generally reflect on the quality and caliber of the human character of each of my players that has contributed to the outcome. That quality and caliber can extend also to, obviously, to coaches, and you yourself as a coach need to be able to acknowledge that you are bringing something to the party. Now, I've given you some examples there of where we've heard these stories before. You look at the 1995 Rugby World Cup winning South African rugby side. There was a story of human triumph, of human spirit. 2007, again, South Africa rugby had come out of a very dark space of Kamstaldraad and Rudolf Strauly and getting absolutely smashed in 2003 and taking on record scores, etc., etc. In 2007, we turned it around. We turned it around with good people. 2019, I don't have to tell any of you what happened in 2019. Rassie Erasmus and Siya Kolisi. Triumphs of humanity, great human beings, great people that have values-focused outcomes. Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool just happens to be my team, and I'm very proud of that. But every time Jurgen Klopp speaks, he's speaking to you from a values perspective. He's building a team of good people. He doesn't take, people that don't behave properly are not welcome. So I was very privileged to chat to Johan Ackerman at the height of the Lions and their success as a Super Rugby franchise. And Johan Ackerman always referenced to me that one of the things I spoke about in that Lions team was positive DNA, and that they wanted to leave positive DNA wherever they were, whatever aspect of their interaction with the public, with each other, with other teams, with opposition, etc. There had to be a positive experience. Their seated area, the start of a field, cleaning up their change rooms, etc. So great people. So to take further the concept of art and science, the art of coaching will be vested in the philosophies and the values-driven model a coach or a coaching team will adopt and implement to access the individual for optimal outcome in a team space. So in effect, it's always going to be about, art being that ability to mold and take external influences and mold, create, and keep creating for optimal growth. That you're never stopping. You're always interacting. You're always growing. Okay. The science side of it is going to be the specific technical steps that as a coach we're going to be taking when it comes to building physical technique, skills, emotional and mental management steps that we need to engage to make sure that we get to the team outcomes. Okay. So in effect, it's going to be, I certainly believe it's very important that as a coach, in any environment that you're interacting in, you're going to be able to circumstantially differentiate in the present, in the moment. You're going to need to circumstantially differentiate when you need to be an artist and when you need to be a scientist, and how you engage with your team of people around you, be it assistant coaches or players, how you engage with those people when you're an artist or when you're a scientist. You need to make sure that you are clear about who you are and how you're talking and what your expectations are. And over time, as we'll see now, when we start to talk a bit further, you'll start to see what I'm really talking about in that space. So I've got some factors that I work into sports coaching, and I can tell you that if you'd asked me 15 years ago to do this presentation, it would have been completely different. My factors in sports coaching 20 years ago would have been dramatically different to what they are now. That's an absolute, I can guarantee you, and I'm hoping that the same applies to all of you, that you're able to evolve your coaching with the times and able to move with the times. And so my factors as I'm experiencing in coaching now, because I'm back into coaching now, which is an interesting experience for me. The first one that's very, very important to me is culture. Now, the definition of culture that I have found and that resonated with me is the ideas, customs, and social behavior of a particular people or society. And in our instance, we will then say group, team, organization, franchise, school, club. That's a grouping of people, all right? So the ideas, customs, and social behavior of a particular group or society. The next very important factor for me is process. You have to be a process engineer. You have to be able to engineer process as a successful coach. The definition of process is a series of actions or steps that you will take in order to achieve a particular end goal. Again, I know that this resonates with all of you as sports coaches because you all take these steps and actions in the pursuit of the different definitions of success, which can be a conversation for another day. Then the third and the final of my three factors is performance. And that's the action of performing a task or a function. I know you all know that if you've built a culture or a process, it comes down to the performance. We have different measurements of performance and success. I certainly believe that I would be far more interested in assessing my process to make sure that my outcome looks after itself. If you're focusing on the outcome before you focus on the process, generally I would go as far as to say you'll probably be unsuccessful because you need to build process. And we'll talk about it a little bit later, but where you see that your outcome is not really what you want it to be, it's not about assessing the outcome, it's about assessing your process, and it's about going into your culture to see where you can fix those two. I've only got 3 up here, and I can tell you again, if I had to do this 20 years ago, I'd probably have 15 or 20 factors to sports coaching here. I believe that the key to coaching is actually to keep it as simple as possible, and I've only been able to do that over a period of time. So my advice to you is also to just try and move with trying to keep it as simple as possible. In all of this, everything has to involve a connection. I said to you earlier that it's about coaching people. It's about your interaction with another human being. It's about engaging with a human being. And so that connection, the relationship that develops between a coach and the athlete, your players, it has to go from an engagement to a relationship in as quick and as an effective time as possible. Don't rush it, let it build. But one of your mini processes in all of what you're doing is to make sure that you build a relationship between coach and player. And the definition of a relationship is the way in which 2 or more people are connected, or the state, as it says here, or the state of being connected. And it's always going to be a two-way street. I want to be very clear. Many coaches have become what I call pleasers, and they do what their players want or what their principals want or what the club president wants, or, and I understand that ultimately a principal at a school pays your salary. You know, the CEO of a sporting franchise pays your salary. But you've got to try and understand that as a two-way street, there's got to be an honest and constructive and open relationship where you are building with players and people around you. It has to be that way. So I want to now for you in a little bit more detail to try and give you a bit more around that. So culture is not what you think you want to do. Culture is what you do. All right? I can take you back to the definitions of culture that we spoke about earlier, where I said that it was ideas and customs and social behaviors of a group of people. Okay? So why do we need culture? Again, this is me asking the question of myself and sharing it with you. And as far as I'm concerned, we need it because it gives meaning to why we do what we agree to do as a group. It guides the individual's behavior for group benefit. It allows for a common conversation to take place where I, as a coach, can be held accountable by the same standards that the players are being held accountable. That is what a culture, the benefit of a culture brings. The worst enemy of culture is selfish people. And whilst we want to remain as positive as possible in all our sporting engagements and our environments, we also have to be very aware that if you are able or you identify selfishness in any aspect of your team environment, you would be well advised to get rid of that as soon as possible. How you get rid of that, that's going to be circumstantial, and it's going to be something you're going to have to deal with in your own instant. You know, it may mean that you can actually convert the selfish person into someone who's not so selfish. I'm not sure. But selfish people within trying to build a positive culture, that is really not going to be of benefit to you. And it's also then moving forward that it's essential that in forming the culture, the uniqueness and the individual, the uniqueness of the individual, should I say, is celebrated, is accessed and encouraged. You have to understand that you cannot have the same expectations of every single individual. Why? Because every one person is different to the next. We are unique, and to get the optimal out of each person, you have to be an artist. You have to extract the best you can out of an individual, whilst we take in the extraneous ingredients and influences around us to mold to a desired outcome. So celebrate the individuality, celebrate the uniqueness of the individual. You have to have synergy with honesty, and that has to exist at every level, from both the coach and the athlete. The days of the authoritarian coach with the power base and holding, that can't exist anymore. As far as I'm concerned, you have to engage almost as an equal. There is a boundary, and yes, as a coach, you do have a certain level of authority, but if you've done your job properly in engaging and building a culture, you won't have to force any level of authority on any group. You will be duly respected for the position you hold if you've done various things, and I hope to unpack some of those things for you today further. The capacity to appreciate the power of the mental strength in preparing the group is vital, and this is where the science is going to come into this area of group preparation. Many times over many years, in fact, I would say one of my defaults as a coach in searching for support mechanisms and support staff to help us achieve our performance goals, I would always default to a sports psychologist to ensure that we were accessing the mental and emotional strength of every individual and helping us to build a unified group. So some key focuses around building culture will be to celebrate diversity and acknowledge adversity and make it safe. You have to make building the culture of your group a very safe space. People have to be able to express themselves without fear of any judgment or any any negativity whatsoever, and focus on building the person. That's got to be your focus in building a culture. It's about building the people all the time. If you are not building people, if you are not growing people, I will tell you right now, you are in the wrong business, and you need to leave coaching forthwith and immediately, because you are actually damaging more than anything. So that's where culture will continue to play a very, very important role in how you do your job. Just some clips that I wanted to show you, just to further expound on culture. So what is culture is the question, and this comes from Bo Hansen, who is an Australian Olympian, a rowing Olympian as far as I recall. And I did a lot of work with Bo Hansen when I was in South Africa, and Bo did quite a few video sessions for us in South Africa. And this is something that he's said to me, is that the short answer is that while some sports teams' cultures can create sustained success, others will only deliver success in the short term, if at all. Culture is a critical factor in the success of any organized group, whether that be corporate organizations or a sports team. One of the common phrases that you'll always hear about culture is the way we behave here. And listen, I've challenged a lot of school colleagues of mine, because one of the potential negatives of culture is that you get caught up in, this is the way we've always done it. That's not culture. That's not culture. That's sort of draconian traditional beliefs that you need to. Culture means you're evolving. I said to you earlier that coaching evolves, sport evolves. It's ever changing. You cannot ever be held down by anything just because this is the way we always behave here, or this is the way we do things around this place. Certain fundamentals can certainly continue to play a role, but don't be held back by these types of things, okay? Another interesting one, which you can see there and obviously read, and I don't have to read it for you, but effectively, I want to just be clear that culture is not about being held back. It's not about investing yourself and hiding behind tradition. Culture and tradition, I don't believe, are the same thing, by the way. And I know that a lot of the monastic schools, the boys' schools, the traditional schools, particularly in South Africa and in New Zealand, I think a lot of the times we use tradition as an excuse. We're very scared of growth and change, and so we hide behind tradition. Tradition is not culture. Don't fall into the trap of trying to convince me that culture and tradition are the same thing. They're not. They're very, very much, very, very different. And I don't even venture to discuss tradition, because I think it's just far too unique. And obviously, so many schools starting at different times have different lengths of traditions. But I want you as a coach to be very clear that I really don't want you to fall into the trap of some type of safety net or some type of delusion that tradition is guiding where you're at the moment. You are coaching in the here and the now. Do you have to respect where you've come from? Absolutely. Does that have to guide where you're going? Potentially. Does it absolutely define where you're going? Definitely not. Definitely not. The next of my three factors being process, and I spoke to you about process engineering and the ability to, in this instance, engineer process means you've got to be almost the determining factor of your process building. You are the one building a process that is specific to where you are in the here and now. Can you reflect on experiences? Absolutely. As I'm doing today, after 25 years of being involved in this, absolutely you must reflect on your experiences. So I want you to just read this from a scientific perspective with regards to process. And I wasn't able to track the author of who had written this, but sports training as a process of morpho-functional adaptation. So I think for us sort of laymen who are not medically qualified, I would go along to say that morpho-functional refers to your body and how you move and how you use your body. So the functions of your body increasing performance means to reach systematically a certain number of both non-specific and specific changes, mainly at a cellular level, i.e. to increase in energy potentials, development of physiological functions, breathing, heart activity, and improving coordination. The basis of such changes can be easily explained by physiological concepts, homeostasis, stress, and adaptation. So what is this homeostasis, etc.? And I think it's important that I want to stress that I'm not prioritizing art over science or science over art. They coexist. You have to know when you're bringing what in and what you need to bring in at a particular time. So homeostasis is a constant balanced state of the organism. Okay, that's what homeostasis by definition is. But from the point of view of sports training, homeostasis can be imagined really as a current level of training before sort of a training cycle begins. So in other words, it's your starting point. It's where you're at. When you wake up in the morning, you're at a state of homeostasis. You're at a point of, when you get up and you start. Now you're going to exert and train, etc. And now you're going to agitate the homeostasis. And this moves into the next part, which is then you're going to stress, the homeostasis levels, so to speak. And the sort of medical terminology or the scientific terminology here would be that you're in a controlled, it's a controlled violation of homeostasis with physical activity, a basic principle of improving your fitness. And sports training attempts to violate the homeostasis of the athlete in a controlled way through exercise load. Now, I will venture to say that even when you're building a culture, you are positively violating and stressing the homeostasis. You're taking from a place of a homeostasis and you're going to now agitate it, stress it, and move it forward by exerting and by causing the stress. And the third part is adaptation. Now, just generally by the word adaptation, you have to adapt. You have to be agile and you have to be able to move and change with the times, okay? And adaptation is defined as a beneficial change of the organism which aims at maintaining homeostasis, but now at a higher level, at a new level, at the process that you followed, and that's purely in respect to quality. Now, in sports coaching, adaptation is the basis of higher levels of training. And you'll see when I come to the performance aspect, what we're talking about moving ourselves through a process. We go from homeostasis, we need to cause some stress, and we need to be adaptive to move ourselves to a higher level. And that applies to culture, to the human being, and to performance. And you'll see how that comes to the fore as we carry on. So in looking at process, the engineering, the process engineering term that I use, it's about building blocks. It's about creating little steps, little milestones that you use to build to an end goal. Now, why do we need this? Why do we need building blocks? A group will collectively need to onboard ideas. You can't just have ideas in isolation. You have to have a collective onboarding of ideas, and your culture and your process, your culture is going to help you move forward in that aspect. Process is both a bridge between culture and performance, but it's also an umbrella to the entire system. By definition, my three factors that I'm raising, that I'm putting to you today, of culture, process, and performance, is collectively a system. And what I'm saying to you now is that I view process as not only a bridge between culture and performance, but an overarching umbrella of both. So why do we need process? That's why I believe you need process. The danger here is that you could have a great culture, but you haven't collectively bought into the process. That's not going to lead to success. So don't think that if you have a great culture, but your process engineering is weak, you're not going to have performance success if your process is not well formed and well worked on, and collectively well formed and well worked on. It has to be genuine. You have to be open, honest, safe. That's why I emphasized that in the beginning. You have to be honest. It's a two-way street. It has to be a safe space where you are celebrating the uniqueness of the human being, the individuality of the person, to bring forward everything into the melting pot of which is our group, so that we can collectively agree. Being fake, and I've said it here, fake has no lifespan. Fake will only get you to a certain point and then it's gone. And you will be seen through in a heartbeat, okay? Got to be detailed, but analysis paralysis is something you have to be very conscious of. Do not get halted in over-analyzing. I said it to you earlier. If Shawn had asked me to present on this in 2009, I would have given you 20 factors of coaching. I don't want you to get caught up in too much detail. 3 factors, that's all I've got. Just keep it simple. There's so much going on in a team environment. The amount of content, the cognitive expectation is so exceptionally high. You need to be very, 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 very clear that you're keeping it as simple as possible to get your messages across. Focusing on the little steps after the desired and identified and agreed outcome is absolutely imperative. Part of your culture formation and part of your process is going to be to set goals. Is going to be to say, yes, we want to lift the cup at the end of this, or yes, we want to be this, or yes, we want to be that, or yes, we want to achieve that. Those are goals. You must have those. You must build outcome. Just don't focus on it. It mustn't be the absolute means to the end. This is the means. Don't worry about the end. Let's get this right. You get this right, your outcome looks after itself. But if you focus on the outcome in isolation, I've seen it in many, many, many seasons in different codes. If you focus solely on the outcome, I am telling you as a fact, you will not succeed. Not sustainably anyway. As a coach, you need to have a very keen eye on both detail of the here and now, but you also have to have a view of the big picture. You also need to know what you're looking for in 3 or 4 seasons' time. Now, to those of you that are involved, particularly with schools, you have 5, if you're in a secondary school, you have 5 years that you have kids for. You have a sports department that you're looking to build a brand off the back of. You've got to be able to give the under 14 year 8 girl playing netball everything possible in year 8 with the vision of this girl playing first team netball by the time she's in year 11 or year 10, however you work in your school. You've got to have that in your radar, but you don't necessarily bother her with it at the time of her year 8 year. She just needs to enjoy her netball in year 8. That hockey player just wants to function as the best hockey player he or she can be in year 8 or year 9. First team will come. It will come. But you have to be able, as the expert coach in that space, focus on the here and now, understanding what the big picture is. Don't burden the athlete with that, though, okay? You as a coach need to access the human resources that are needed in the here and now, and you need to access everything that isn't human, all the technology, all the stuff on the internet, any resources you can get your hands on, get your eyes on, reading, studying, learning all the time. You need to access that to make sure that you are delivering the best coaching experience possible to the individual, that they can reach their best version of themselves in the here and the now, okay? Even in individual sports, even in sports such as tennis or squash or swimming, where, and to a large extent, I would argue that cricket potentially has a bit of individualisticness to it. There's such an English word. But you're always accountable to somebody. When I say accountable, I'm not meaning from a reporting sense, but you always owe somebody something. In swimming, it's your coach. When you go to the Olympics for the swimming team, you're representing your country You're representing your swimming colleagues that are with you. So you're always part of something. Don't ever believe you're just on your own, because Novak Djokovic or Rafa Nadal, they've got coaching teams, 12, 15 people that work with them. They're accountable to those people. When they're out there performing, they are accountable to those people. They are delivering for those people. So don't be confused by what the code is. This stuff works for any sport, potentially even for chess. Those of you, I'm happy to debate whether chess is a sport. Certainly my chess stars over the years have been pretty conclusive that they feel it's a sport. I'm okay with that. That's fine. But this works. Next, constructive communication. We have to be effective. And I know Shawn works with it all the time. Communication, communication, communication. Sometimes we can talk absolute rubbish. It's a waste of time. We need to be constructive with our communication. You need to develop collective buy-in. You need to have belief in the process, which will allow same-page conversations. It's so important to be able to have a conversation in a group where we're talking from the same page, whether it be our culture, the values we've developed in our culture, if it's honesty, integrity, commitment, dedication. Constructive communication allows or could be the vehicle for a same-page conversation, which in sporting groups I've seen is so crucial. Same-page conversations, holding ourselves to consistent standards that are the same for everybody. Although we celebrate the diversity and we acknowledge adversity, we need to be able to consistently have constructive communication. Okay? That means honest, but you don't have to break someone's spirit when you're honest. You can still be constructive when you're giving feedback. So be sure that the word constructive, which is a very positive word, but it's a very honest word, that needs to become part of your vocabulary when you are planning out anything. Let's be constructive. Let's be effective. Constructive means building. It means going somewhere. Focus on that word and keep it as part of your vocabulary. And it's best to create many measurement points along your process. Don't look for the end goal. It's not just about the trophy that comes at the end of the English Premier League. What have we done to make our group a happier group? What have we done? One of the biggest measurements that I used when I was involved in school sport was how many kids returned season after season to that sport. How did that sport grow season upon season? If it grows, you're doing wonderful, wonderful things. If you're able to attract new players to your sport at a school, you're doing amazing, amazing things. If you're then also able to win some trophies along the way, that's amazing. But at a school, you're encouraging activity and you're encouraging growth and you're attracting people to not live a sedentary lifestyle, to be active with you. That is amazing. So when I would measure coaches year on year, I would always look at how many kids stayed in the sport. Did they attract any new kids to the sport? Certainly if I wanted to bring them back the season after, which was always the goal, who was returning back to them? You know, what retention did they have? Those are very, very important things. So my point being, just create, whatever your circumstances are, create multiple mini measurement points that you as a coach are just able to measure with your coaching team, measure your process along the way. Is it being effective? Remain dynamic. If it's not being effective, get rid of it, change it, and move on. Don't harp on stuff that isn't working. If it isn't working, move on. Drop it. Okay, so be flexible, adaptive. Remember, we spoke about adaptation. Always be adaptive to what's happening around you. So what does process look like? Now, I generally liked to create real-life indicators of what all these fancy value-based words were. Process, integrity, honesty, all wonderful words. But what do they actually look like in real life? When I say to a school student, you know, I want you to have integrity when you're on the field. I want you to be honest. And they say to me, but what does that look like? And you have to find ways of indicating to your athletes, to your group, tangible behaviors, things that And sometimes, unfortunately, what happens is the opposite behavior happens, and then you can say to the person, you see that? That's not what I want. Generally, if you show what you don't want, that can help you understand what you do want. So don't be shy of bringing those out. It's not negative. Just be constructive about it. So this phase here is kind of, for me, where art and science almost come together. This is not a place where art or science is one or the other. They're definitely coexisting in this space. And if we can build from here, from the cultural agreement and the synergy that we've spoken about, and we step up more into implementation space, the process will define the parts of culture, and it will give us tangible components to see how we will make culture come alive. So we've engineered our process. What does it look like? It belongs to the group. No two processes are the same. Don't try and compare one process to another. Just be in the here, be present. Look at this process and this group of people, this situation. That's the process you're worried about. Don't worry about something else. Certainly there can be similarities, of course, but they will never be the same. They will never, ever be the same. Why? Because no two people are the same. That means that the people you're interacting with are different to the people you interacted with the day before, because no two people are the same. Okay? Appreciate the uniqueness without being afraid of it. For the individuals, so let's have a look at this. So process in two ways, essentially, from Sportalizer Academy, which is a resource that I refer to often. We have conformity, which I'm debating in my mind every single day, because I belong to various groups, and I'm sort of working around conformity. Now, that's internally, it's an internally driven desire to accept influence because the team chooses to do so. Sometimes we don't want to do things. Okay, I'm in a situation where there's often times where I'm thinking, oh, I don't want to do that, but because my teammates have gone and done it, I've got to do it. I've got to conform. Okay, so there's conformity. And then you have compliance. And compliance is an externally imposed acceptance of influence, often regulated by strong rewards, and strong punishment for that matter as well. Now, you need to work out, it's more likely that compliance is sort of more likely among the low status group members. Now, I don't want to create classist environments here, but where there are statuses and maybe your juniors, your new entrants into a group, your freshies, whatever you want to call them, they generally are compliant. They don't ask questions, they don't challenge the so-called status quo, they comply, they just get on with it. Whereas certainly conformity is much more something that's happening at your seniors, at people that have been around the team a lot longer of the time. So I would always, personally, I would encourage that you remove status as soon as possible. Status should be, and I grew up in teams, by the way, that I came in and we had all types of initiation procedures and, being new to the team and, you had certain things, shave your eyebrows, run around the field, whatever the case may be. There were all different types of initiation mechanisms to try and bring you into this group. I understand that those exist, but I think there's a way that it can exist without necessarily sort of degrading the human spirit. I think there's ways that you can drive positive conformity by removing status. When someone gets into a team, if they are seen as lower or an entry level, why you want them to be on this level, right, in terms of the team dynamic, but you want them to contribute on the same level as you. How does that even mathematically make sense? Someone comes into a team, bang, that's where it is. Everyone's on the same level. No one arrives, no one's carrying someone else's bag, polishing someone else's shoes. 25 years ago, I would have been saying something completely different because I was in a different headspace and I'd come out of a different environment. 25 years later, being in a far different position, having different experiences, I can tell you that model doesn't work. It does not work when you're in the team. I'm not talking about boys' schools where we see under 14 sports team running around with water bottles or whatever. I'm not talking about that. That's a different story. I'm talking about when you're in the same team. There cannot be status. Remove it. Get rid of it. It will help you build your culture, and it'll help you engineer your process so much easier. Why do you want to complicate issues by having to deal with who's a junior, and who's been in the team for 3 months, and who's been in the team for 6 months? What a load of rubbish. What a waste of my time as a coach. Wouldn't interest me in the slightest. Right, now we get on to the performance side of things, which in reality is where everybody is ultimately focused, okay? The end game where we see the benefits of constructive culture and collective process. If you want to call it collective culture and constructive process, be my guest. That's absolutely fine, because the words all fit into each other and you can work it out how it suits you and what suits you. Now, this stage is either going to form a micro culmination of the efforts invested to this point, as is with the case with a school season, a school sporting model, as I've referred to already, where there's multiple codes, multiple age groups, or it may be the absolute culmination, okay? What's the absolute culmination? A league victory, a cup, a tournament, the Rugby World Cup, the Netball World Cup, the Olympics, where there is an absolute culmination. That is the end of this process. There's no question. When we perform at the Rugby World Cup, we win certain games, we stay. We lose, we go home. Soccer World Cup, same thing. Those are absolute culmination points of process. And performance must never be taken for granted and certainly can't be left in the background. Don't ever think that you can do, again, just culture and process and then just leave performance. You have to pay attention to performance. Of course you do. There's lessons in all performances. Okay, there's lessons in winning and there's lessons in losing. And when winning, I believe that sometimes we kind of feel, well, we're winning, so let's just leave everything. I must be honest, as a coach, that was when I was on my highest alert, was when we were winning. I wanted to make sure that we continued to win, that it wasn't about, and continuing to win, by the way, that doesn't mean win at all costs. I wanted to make sure that our culture stayed right and that our process stayed right, that we continued on a positive trajectory, okay? Because winning, a lot of times, can breed complacency and arrogance. So you have to be very much alert when it comes to lots of winning. When we lose, I would certainly run a check personally, like almost like a car mechanic almost. When we were losing, the biggest enemy here when you lose is panic. Don't panic. Losing is not an invitation to panic. Now, perhaps I'm preaching to the converted, because as a coach, you're sometimes on the wrong end of panic. Where schools, I've been a victim of it, where a rugby season at Jeppe Boys in 2003 wasn't going the way, or 2004 wasn't going the way it should. Much to my amazement, I got called in the middle of the season and the headmaster said, "You're out, sorry." And I was like, are you joking? So I know that you're a victim of panic sometimes. I'm asking you as a coach, don't ever panic to the extent that your players are victims of that panic, okay? Be patient, but run the check. Run the oil check on your process, because if your performance and your outcomes have not been what you were hoping, something in your process has not been as good as it can be. I'm not talking that you failed. I'm just saying something could have been done better. Your job as the coach is to go back in to the training process, the mental preparation, the physical preparation, the emotional preparation, try and find out somewhere where our process could have been better. And if you look hard enough, you will find it. I know that it's hard, because as a coach, you take it personally. You almost feel it is a personal reflection on who you are as an individual, because there hasn't been a victory of some sort. And to go back into the process is almost very introspective, and it's hard. It's hard to acknowledge that perhaps I haven't done something right. It's very easy to tell other people, and I know that's hard, but you've got to give yourself that opportunity. Once you've done the check, the feedback and how you deliver the feedback post-performance is absolutely fundamental. Feedback has one singular goal, and that is to improve your group. Nothing else. You never ever deliver feedback that breaks a person or breaks a team spirit. That is not feedback. That is, as far as I'm concerned, that's bullying. Because as a coach, you're a coward if you are delivering feedback that breaks your group. That's cowardly, and that is a form of bullying as far as I'm concerned. And again, if that's who you are, please don't carry on coaching. Okay? So make sure that with feedback, your one aim is to improve. That's all you want to do. You don't need to remind an assistant coach or a player of what they've done wrong. I promise you that if the performance hasn't gone the way you've hoped, everybody knows what they've done wrong. I assure you of that. You don't need to remind them. Okay? If they don't necessarily stand up or own up, that's a different conversation. Never do that in the group. Take someone quietly to the side and say, look, I think you should have been more accountable for your actions. I think you should have stood up to your downfalls in the game a bit more and work with that person to grow that person, because that's a weakness. If you're not able to step up and be accountable for where you haven't done perhaps your best, that is a life skill, and sport teaches life skills. So if you don't take up that opportunity to teach somebody that life skill of accountability, of responsibility, of taking accountability or responsibility for something that you haven't delivered, you have missed an opportunity as a coach. We don't want to miss opportunities. We want to take every single opportunity that we get. This image that you see on your screen now, where it talks about performance management and monitor, review, improve, measure, etc. That for me is what I would call the cycle of performance. These exist in various images, and you can make your own, or you can find plenty on the internet. What is a cycle of performance? A place, as far as I'm concerned, where the detailed work has been sustainably worked at, and the system, okay, so remember I told you what a system was. For me, the three factors: culture, process, performance. That's a system. So where the system starts to look after itself, and in my experience, with the right work being done, this comes into action round about year 4 or 5 of a 7-year plan. Now, when you're working with secondary school children, you have a set 5 years. If you're working with primary school children, you have a 7-year time frame. In Australia, it's a little bit different. You have 6 years and 6 years, I think, because year 7 they go off to high school. But the reality is that your plan in building a sports program and a coaching of a team must, as I said to you, have an eye always on the bigger picture. And if you've done your work properly, this cycle of performance that you see in front of you starts to work for itself. That allows you as a coach to focus on different things as opposed to these 3 factors. You're now able to maybe work a bit more with the support coaches, work a bit more with the psychology guys, work a bit more on the values, and start to spend a little bit more specific time in culture or in process or in performance. What I'm saying to you is if you get the cycle of performance correct, you then start to have the opportunity to choose where you can spend your time. Up until that point, you don't necessarily have that choice. You have to constantly work at culture and performance and process all the time. But once you get it right and the cycle of performance kicks in, you, as far as I'm concerned, I would say you would be released from detailed focus, and you now all of a sudden can spend some time on having longer conversations with individuals, longer conversations with support staff, looking at other partners around you to engage in, looking at other resources all the time. Very, very, it's a wonderful place. I've had the privilege of getting to this place twice in my career, only twice. And I can tell you that it's a wonderful, wonderful feeling to know that you've built something that is now turning over and working for itself. It's very, very rewarding. And I want to implore you to be able to pat yourself in the back when you acknowledge that this phase has come to you. because it's not easy, and you really need to be able to acknowledge yourself and the role that you've played in that. So some practical thoughts around performance, because, you know, ultimately I wrote an article a few years ago where I did the differentiation between a scoreboard and a smile board. And the scoreboard obviously is the win or loss. It's very clear, either you win or you lose. There's no comments column. It's very clear. If you've won, you've won. If you've lost, you've lost. No one's interested in how it happened. It just happened. Whereas the smile board is more about how people are enjoying their sport. And I would certainly hope to, you know, like to believe that in the school environment, there's a lot more smile board focuses other than our scoreboard focuses. But I understand that we certainly don't participate in sport to lose. And I wouldn't want anyone to be participating in sport to lose, but we can't win at all costs either. So in this space where we're talking about performance, the end game, where we hopefully are seeing the benefits of constructive culture and collective process, science is probably going to play a bit more of a prevalent role here than in the other two factors. The management of your muscles, of creating optimum exertion versus efficacy in competition. To this end, all of these things, they are absolutely fundamental to remind us as coaches that we must. It's important here to recognize that, again, you don't coach robots, you coach people. So even though science is very prevalent here, don't forget that you coach people, not robots. So they have emotions, they have feelings, they have thoughts, and you need to take that on board. Yes, you're using science to create stronger, fitter, faster individuals, but they are still individuals and they're still human beings. One of the key elements that I just want to talk about specifically is fatigue in performance. And this is going to lead to a very key point that I want to make about performance. Now, the onset of fatigue can absolutely be rapid. And I'm really talking practically now. I want you to almost envision yourself in your competitive space. That's on the side of a field or the side of a court or the side of a pool. I want you to envision yourself in this particular space. Now, the onset of fatigue can be absolutely rapid, and it's normally the result of cumulative effects that have come from weeks or months or years of physical effort, right? That cumulative effect. Now, you have to realize that scientifically, unless, you know, and the management of fatigue, particularly in the international arena, is a very seriously managed area. And you've always heard rugby union teams, AFL footy teams, even cricket to a certain extent, they create rotations of where they're resting players. That's all management of fatigue. That's all management of the physiological aspect of the physical nature of sport. So you have to know, and you need to play this video in your head 1,000 times, by the way, because playing a video in your head allows you to react far more professionally in the situation as opposed to just being reactive. But it could be this game. It could be this game that you are watching, that cumulative effect hits the player, and they are just, to use no better term than the good old Afrikaans phrase, they are sat. It's just they're done. They are finished. They've got nothing more to give. Somehow it's just arrived. The lactic acid is in and they're fatigued, and that's it. Now, what I will say is that if that does happen, again, I hold the coaching force accountable. It's on you as the coach, because you would not have in your process sustainably been aware of the fullest well-being of your athlete, that you've allowed it to happen, that they've got to that one game and bang, it's popped and they are sat and they're finished and they can't give you anything more. And I've seen it. I've seen coaches go absolutely berserk on the side of the field. And I've looked at the player and I can see that that player is mentally, emotionally, and physically done. They cannot give any more. And that means that we have failed as coaches. Don't fail in that space. You never, ever forsake the well-being of your players for anything, not for any result, not for any medal or any cup or any trophy. The well-being of people in your care is absolutely your priority at every single turn, and decision that you make must be based in ensuring the well-being of your people. So we shouldn't get to a place of collapse, because we should be managing that over our process. We should be looking after our players' mental, emotional, and physical states. Now, it obviously, you know, once they fatigue, they fatigue. So shouting and screaming and jumping up and down on the sideline or on the side of the court or the pool, it's not going to render anything. The only thing you're going to do is you're actually going to separate the relationship. You're going to damage the relationship between you and this individual, because you're actually not recognizing where they are as individuals. So you have to use performance practice in your preparations. And I'll talk to you a little bit about performance practice now. There's 7 steps, okay? 7 steps to performance practice. Performance practice step 1 is performing the skill. Now really here, this is a friend of mine once told me, and it was a wonderful phrase: repetition is the mother of all skill. It's as simple as that. Doing things over and over and over and over again. Repetition is the mother of all skill. Start slowly, allow the neurons to cement the skill and the action required in your mind, muscle memory, and commit to this part. This is absolutely, here is a mini process within the process of driving performance practice. Okay? It's the art, the performance practice is as it says there for you, the art of simulating competition intensity. So perform the skill. Number 2, perform the skill very well. So can you see how this was broken down into the most simplistic terms? Is it taken for granted that we want to perform the skill well? Absolutely, but let's perform the skill first, and then let's perform it very well. Okay? Mastering the skills will only come from regular and repetitive practice, which is then combined with constructive feedback from your coaches, which we've covered on, and certainly would potentially could incorporate the use of video or any other, you know, performance analysis that, you know, or technologies that that you have. But nothing will ever beat your eye as a coach. Nothing will ever beat you watching and giving first-hand feedback, which is constructive to your players. Nothing will ever beat that. Number 3, perform the skill very well and at speed. So unless the skill or the skill set that you're working on can withstand competition level speed, including the accelerations that you would need in competition, the agility requirements that you may need in competition, the communication that you absolutely need in competition, and the explosiveness that you need in competition, then you're not competition ready. So all of your preparation, Gary Player would say it often, the way you train is the way you play. You're going to train sloppy, you're going to play sloppy, and the opposite is true. So train with competition intensity and you will perform with competition intensity. Step 4, perform the skill very well at speed and under fatigue. So here's step 4 is where you start preparing your players for that fatigue space. And you can assess how players operate in that fatigue space. Okay? A crucial step, because here we get to collectively identify the danger zones, okay, in a competition. What are those danger zones? That's different for every code, but it could be the last 20 meters. Ask Chad Leclerc, he'll tell you about his swimming race, the danger zone. That one extra stroke that got him the gold medal, okay? The last 20 meters of the 100-meter freestyle, the last 5 minutes before halftime in a soccer game or a rugby union game, those are the danger zones, okay? The last play in that game, the 5-meter scrum that you're defending, and you've got to defend your lead. That's a danger zone. Do you have what it takes in that danger zone to do what you need to do to defend your try line? That's the question you need to pose to your teams. And many outcomes will fundamentally come down to the quality of skill execution during the last 5% of time and being able to perform the fundamental skills when absolutely buggered. Physically, you are finished. Can you hit it? Can you perform at that point when your glycogen levels are gone, you are dehydrated, you've got neuromuscular fatigue that you can't even describe. That's how tired you are. But that's going to separate the winning edge, that competitive winning edge. Number 5, perform the skill very well at speed, under fatigue, and under pressure. Far too often we do all of those and then there's no pressure. So you're doing a soccer drill and you want your strikers to score a goal, but there's no defenders running at them in training. That's not what happens in a game. What happens in a game is your defender attacks you and closes your space and puts you under pressure. Same in rugby, same in AFL footy. Okay? So you need to be able to execute in the danger zone when you're fatigued and there's pressure. Can you do all of that? And how are you as a coach preparing your players at that step, at number 5? Number 6, excuse me, perform the skill very well at speed, under fatigue, and under consistent pressure. So can you sustain a 15-minute pressure? Look at how many times, in fact, and Shawn can correct me, but I believe that one of the biggest comments that came out of the Rugby World Cup final in 2019 when South Africa played England was that period just before halftime where South Africa absolutely, like warriors, defended in their danger zone in the 25-meter area or the 22, however you want to call it. They defended and defended and defended and defended and defended. Even when it came to 2 meters by their line, they were still defending and did not allow anything to break their defense. That is, I can assure you, steps 1 through 6 are absolutely intact in the group that was playing rugby that day for the Springboks. We have at step number 6 here where we're talking about performing our skills well at speed and under fatigue with consistent pressure. There's 2 parts of our brain here. We've got our training brain and we've got our competition brain. The training brain, that's the brain that we use in training and preparation. And generally that training brain is quite okay with laziness. It's okay with sloppiness, with inaccuracies. The ball dropped. It's okay in the game. I won't drop it. I'll pick it up. I won't knock the ball on. Don't worry about it. Or, I'll make that pass when it counts. Don't worry in the game. But you haven't done it once in training. That's our training brain that says, it'll be okay on the day. The competition brain, that's the brain you need to create in your training sessions because that's the brain that you use on the field of competition or in the pool or in the court. That's the brain we want to train. Okay? So next, there you go. A little bit about that, the training brain and the competition brain. And the last step, perform the skill very well and at speed. So you've covered all of this. But again, there's my key alert to everybody. No player's well-being is worth a result. Never forsake a player. This, as far as I'm concerned, permeates through every level. I don't care if you're playing for the Springboks or the Proteas or the Hockey Roos or the All Blacks. I don't care. You never, ever as a coach forsake a player. Not for any reason under the sun. Please, I would implore all coaches to make sure that that's fundamental. We're nearly at the end. So I wanted to just cover off. I've covered off my 3 factors of coaching. The role of the coach is something that I just want to touch on briefly. How we make our athletes feel valued is by understanding them, their strengths, their limitations, what motivates them, and any other need that's going to influence how they train, how they interact, how they perform, how they contribute to the unit. Not every athlete is the same, and so every athlete needs to be coached in a way which is suitable for them. That doesn't mean that you've got to go over and over about certain things. It just means that you need to identify with the individual and you need to coach the individual to be the best versions of themselves. If you are the best version of yourself as a coach, you will make your players the best versions of themselves. So some of the roles, a mentor, okay? Really, and as I've covered off on some of the stuff, but a mentor is somebody who is there with the purpose of building the person. You are mentoring other human beings. You are building people. It's a fundamental role, and you are growing the goodness in people. You are seeing the best in them, and you are enhancing those things, and you are working with them in a constructive way to improve areas that need improving. You need to be a friend. It's a bit of a gray area, this one, and I want to emphasize, particularly in the school space, a friend does not certainly cross the borders or doesn't break boundaries of professionalism. Child safety is imperative. So when I talk about being a friend, I don't mean that as coaches you should be on WhatsApp with your players, particularly at school level now I'm referring to, that you shouldn't really be Facebook friends with players, and you should never really be interacting with your players in a private scenario where it's inappropriate. So just be very clear. When I talk about a friend, I say that in the most appropriate fashion that we are, we are there for our players and for our support staff. We maintain strict professional standards, and then we take the welfare and the well-being of all our players and all our team members, into account, and that's absolutely essential for us. The next one is a counselor, very similar to a mentor, but certainly, although it's similar, there's obviously differences, and sometimes, what I would like to say when it comes to counseling is, if you've got access to support staff or that you can refer to someone that is a professional in that space, most schools today have school counselors. I would, as a coach, definitely refer to a professional in that space, play my role as the coach, share my knowledge, share my information, but I would rather have a professional facilitator who's a counselor helping us in that area, as opposed to taking that on myself. You need to be a negotiator. Every coach needs to be a negotiator. We know that. But in this instance, it's going to play a role in how you bring culture together with process, together with performance, and how you look after all the individuality and the uniqueness, and taking into account, celebrating, as I say, celebrating the diversity, but acknowledging the adversity. You need to be a negotiator. There's ups and downs, there's ebbs and flows, and you need to be able to move with those. You need to be agile and adaptive. Problem solver, you've definitely got to be a problem solver, particularly at school coaching. You rock up and there's another team on your field, or the goals haven't been put up, or there's no nets, or the lines aren't on, or the director of sport or the coach or the sports coordinator didn't open the kit room and it's delayed, and you've got to be a problem solver. You've got to move. You can't be stagnant because of any single problem. And when you're building your coaching philosophy, one of the key areas is that, and I'll come to it just now, is that you need to be adaptive to your environment. You can't blame anything. You've got to get on with it as a coach. There's no excuses. Trustworthy. In growing people, their lives and their circumstances are daily and are absolutely crucial. And as a coach, when we talk about being a friend, a mentor, a counselor, you have to be able to take that on board. And you need to be able to be trustworthy to that individual. Trust is absolutely fundamental. For me, consistency breeds trust, and trust breeds loyalty. And so there's just no way through it, as far as I'm concerned, without that in place. And the final one is being a role model. Being a clear example of the highest standards that you're expecting of your players. You are that example. You lead by example. You are a living, tangible display of the highest standards that you would expect of any one individual in your group. That is you as the coach. It comes with responsibility, and it comes with accountability. Don't try and shirk that, because that's really not where we want to be as individuals. And just to end off, final whistle, I suppose, I think obviously the one thing I want to emphasize is that you need to, as a coach, build a philosophy. And a lot of, hopefully what I've spoken about here today helps you build a philosophy. A philosophy is what makes you as a coach, what defines you as an individual. And as I said to you up front, it's the answer to the big question of why do I? And I'm going to leave the rest to you in terms of how you answer that and how you build that. But one of the key areas that I want to cover off on is just being very clear that your environment is something that when you're building your coaching philosophy, you have to be adaptive and agile to environments, and that you can't blame anything. Whatever environment you land up with, and you need to make the best of it. Your players didn't ask for that environment. They probably didn't cause the environment, so they can't be the victims of it. Coaching in COVID is something that I think we all need to be able to now start thinking about, because how do you as a coach stay relevant? How do you stay connected? How do you engage? Just like we're doing today is something that you've got to take on board. I've looked at the word COVID, and I've got a couple of things that I'm going to start working on. C for computer, O for opportunity, V for virtual, I for individual, D for development. You need to find ways of activating all those different words. We're on the computer today. We've taken the opportunity to take on board. It's a virtual coaching session. Hopefully, as an individual, I'm inspiring your individuals, and I'm contributing to your development, as you are to mine, because I had to work on this presentation. So find a way through COVID to remain engaged, remain connected, and remain relevant to not only yourself, but to certainly address these interesting and challenging times. And I find that with COVID, what's happened here is it's given us a chance to really engage on so many different levels of awareness. We get to not only deal with game awareness, but we get to deal with self-awareness, get to deal with ourselves. So use that opportunity to fundamentally work on your coaching philosophy that you build over time, okay? If you want to catch up on any of the articles that I've written, and certainly some of the videos that I've released on some coaching topics, I do have a YouTube channel, and it's there. You just search The Sporting Edge with Greg H, and you'll be able to see some content that I load every so often. And I had the privilege of talking to Shawn a few weeks ago, which is a really fantastic conversation. So in essence, really, I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity of spending time with you today. And I really hope that, you can interact with me on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. I really don't even mind if you really want to talk to me about something specific. Shawn will give you my mobile number down here in Melbourne, and you're more than welcome. I'm always happy to have a conversation with fellow coaches who hopefully I can learn from and grow. So a big thank you, and really I just want to wish you all just safe, be as safe as possible in these very difficult, challenging times. Get out there and give it your best and change lives. I think many coaches, you don't realize the legacies that you leave and the stories that people tell about you many, many years on. You have that opportunity to engage and impact on an individual right now. And I really would hope that you take that opportunity seriously and you deliver on it in as full a way as possible. So thank you again, and just my best wishes to all of you. Everybody.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay. So this has been very, very interesting from Greg. So to approach some of Greg's questions, I've actually asked him a couple of questions whilst he was talking, and he sent us a couple of answers. But just for future reference, I'm just going to send you the link to Greg's YouTube channel. There we go. Let me send it to you in the chat box. Sorry, my chat's taking a little while coming up, but I'll send you the link in the chat box. Also, what I'm going to do now was, he actually did send me an audio clip to talk about, to answer 2 of the questions. So let me just add that to the presentation quickly, and then I'll let you listen to what he had to say. But Greg does have a couple of answers to a couple of the questions. Specifically, he's going to answer the question about when a team has, when a team's in a winning momentum, how do you deal with arrogance? And the second one is talking about the aggressive coaching styles. Just on the aggressive coaching style side, for me, there's a bit of a fine line between an aggressive coaching style and going beyond the Call of Duty and actually being a bit of a bully. So what we are going to do in the future is we're going to do a webinar where one of our speakers is actually going to talk about the difference between the two, because passion can sometimes, you can get sometimes caught up a bit in passion, in your passion. So I think that'll be actually quite interesting to follow that webinar. We'll just schedule a date and time for it. Okay, let me just share the screen here with Greg's answers to the question, and any other questions you've got. What we'll do is we'll collect them up and send them to Greg, and he'll put it onto his YouTube channel, the answers to all your questions. Let me just play Greg's answer to the couple of questions that he's already answered.
Okay, so in terms of aggressive coaching, there's no place for it. A coach has to model the high standards, as I said. Aggressive coaching is not aggressive coaching that is constructive, that doesn't break people down. That's acceptable as long as the aggression is not breaking people's spirits. Then there's a place for it. In terms of arrogance of teams, I'm of the firm belief that if a team gets arrogant after winning, then the culture system is not developed well enough. It means that as a coaching group, there's been far too much focus on performance as the measure of success, whereas not developing the culture phase properly and not having a good enough appreciation of process. So this team's pure measurement is around winning. So the more the win, the more important they feel to themselves, the more arrogant they get. I would address culture. I would certainly have a look at process. And within culture, I'd be addressing communication style, making sure that leaders in the team understand that a culture of success is not one that simply revolves around winning, but it has to be a holistic culture that allows for positive DNA. Arrogance will not be viewed with favor out in the market.
Cool. So that's the answer to the first few questions from Greg. He will, as I said, he will still talk in the future in one of his own posts on his YouTube channel. We will send out the link to his YouTube channel so you can contact him. You can ask more questions. So we'll collect up all the questions that you guys are asking, put them together, and then Greg can actually answer them individually. Okay, so now it's time for Kassey to have her presentation, and she'll be talking about the media side of sport and school sport. Sorry.
Right. Good morning, everybody. Okay, so we're running a little bit over time, so I will try and be as quick as I can. But I just wanted to say hello and good morning. And you've heard a lot from Shawn and Greg, and I hope it's been very helpful to you. And you've taken a lot of those ideas and you've imprinted them, and you'll take them to your coaching in the future. Now, while all this has been going on, I've had a couple of I've looked at who's on the webinar, and I see that there's quite a few coaches that have never had any formal coaching education, or they don't have any qualifications. And I also see that there's a couple of you that I have actually worked for previously, and who've been all around the world, from the Netherlands to Germany to even Brazil. So I welcome you all. And now I'm going on to share my screen with you. And let's get on with the presentation. Right. Oops. So I'm going to be talking about something completely different, very different from the others have chatted about. And that is how the media can play a part in your coaching career and how they can actually add value to you. So this is what we're going to touch on within the next half an hour or so. To allow you to get further on your day, I'm going to try and be a little bit quicker. First of all, we are going to talk about how a professional coach, every professional's career starts at school. So you need to position yourself as an authority. When we all read up about an athlete, you can hear about the school, but you don't often hear about the school coach. But be the coach that makes the difference. We are always interviewing coaches at Intune, and stories that we have, and what we have noticed is very often sometimes coaches, they don't even know their player's name. He'll say, for example, my left back is really good. So what's his name? Not sure, or call somebody in the background. What's that guy's name? We can't report on that. We can't just report on things that we don't know about. And also, the media can help you. They can help build your profile as well as that of the school. It's up to you to make that impression on your player and to get your name out there. If you are in the news, it promotes your profile as well as that of the school and your potential star. Here's another example. We ran an international schools competition for youngsters. Once we identified the local team, they went and played in an international final. We would profile the coach on the radio, the television, and the print. And when the school came back, they'd always say to us, you know, registration numbers have gone up for the following year, and that's a sign of a successful school. Well, the coach has said to us, wow, I'm more sought after in my area, and I've been offered better positions. So the media actually has a value for you. And the public love a great story. We're going to go into this. We all know that South Africans love winners, and they're ruthless when our national athletes don't do well. And the media is filled with things like, but there's no development. Meanwhile, there's so much development out there, but nobody knows about it. So the media is not nearly as scary as you think, but they're actually here to assist us. But I'm just going to take you back one step and say, who am I and what qualifies me to be able to talk about the media? Well, I'm the founder of Intune Communications, and as Shawn said, we are over 10 years old, and we specialize in PR communications and digital agency, and we love doing content. Our content creation, we love telling stories. We also do media training, as that's very critical because everybody needs to be aligned on the messaging. You need to chat along the same lines. You know, there's rules and regulations for everything, whether you're at a school, an academy, or a sporting body, or even as a sponsor. What are my qualifications? Well, I've got diplomas in marketing, I've done communications, management, and industrial psychology. So getting back to Intune, we're very results driven. And what that means is our key objective is to give clients an excellent return on investment, or what we call the ROI. We measure this against what they spend, and PR is becoming more and more a critical link in the marketing mix. Me personally, 30 years experience in sport. I've personally worked on a multitude of sports on the international, domestic, and school level. The reason we specialize in PR is that through all these years, I've realized it's the most underutilized element of the marketing mix. Although I've experienced a great change in this, specifically since COVID. And, you know, an event will cost a lot of money, but only those that attend it witness it. And if you're lucky enough for it to go on TV. But much is not on TV. And then it's over. What we do through PR, we take that story further. We take it far and wide, and we let it live longer. Sports I've been involved with? Well, look at the right-hand bottom corner. Benson Hedges. Yep, I started by working with a company that had the rights. I had the company that bought the rights into the country. In those days, nobody believed in Benson Hedges cricket. The cricketers nor the management just thought of it. Colored clothing? Well, that's just not done. Don't break the tradition of the white clothing on the fields. So I became known as the Pajama Queen. And my boss at the time was the Pajama King. We had to persuade Adidas in those days to even make the clothing for us. I just want to give a quick story. I hope we've got a little bit of time. But it was a specific year. We changed kit suppliers. It was the first game, Northern Gauteng versus Western Province at Tux in Pretoria, and it was a televised game. 15 minutes prior to the start, one of the Northern Gauteng players came rushing to me saying, we've got a huge problem. Western Province refused to come onto the field. They say the kit doesn't fit. Well, I was a 20-year-old feisty lady in those days. So into the dressing room I went, shouted at them, put on your kit, go onto the field, we'll sort this out later. Well, the sport was more amateur in those days. So we could do that. Nowadays, that would never happen. Then Benson Hedges became Standard Bank, and now it's even evolved further to KFC T20. And guess what? We're still involved, which I'm very proud of. Now, soccer was it. I've been in the soccer game as long. 30 years ago, cricket was played in the summer and soccer in the winter. JPS was where it all started for me. I was a young white lady running around the stadiums in the townships and rural areas. It was absolutely amazing and of great fun to me. In those days, JPS was the best sponsor. They had piles of money to spend on activations and promotions. You know, sponsorship wasn't a big deal in those days, so we could experiment. So I've been through all the evolution of sports sponsorship. In the last 30 years, at least 20 of them, I've been involved in school sport, in soccer. Rugby, I'm not going to talk about rugby because Shawn has already alluded to that. And all I can say is Shawn completed his matric in Italy. He did a scientific matric and he played rugby for Italy. So there have been plenty of exciting sports and sporting events that I've been involved with, which has included Grand Prix, SA motor racing, netball. I even worked for the Hockey Association for a while. Even the logo that they're still using, we did many years ago. I've done road running, athletics. I even managed a skydiving team. I was on the organizing committee for the 1996 African Cup of Nations. It was great fun. And I've done sports for the physically and or intellectually disabled. I've been lucky enough to travel a bit. I attended the Mali and Tunisian AFCON. I went to the Korean-France World Cups, and I was lucky enough to work, we as Intune were lucky enough to work for FIFA in 2010 for the communications department. And then there were a couple of sponsors that we worked for, like Kia, Sony, Coca-Cola, MTN. And then my international experience, well, we went to Jersey Islands in 2015, where we were part of the organizing committee for the Island Games. It was absolutely great. We, it's very, very similar to an Olympic Games, but for islands mainly. So now that's me in a nutshell, and Intune Communications. So let's get started. The first thing I want to do is play a video of an interview that I want you to listen to.
Hey, Coach, is there anything you want to change?
I mean, I don't know what you want me to tell out. Everybody's like, football's a team game. Okay, it's not a team game. Okay, I did my part. All right, I put in a great game plan. I mean, these players, they're horrible. My players are no good. I mean, everybody's like, no excuses. No, I got 22 excuses. 11 on my offense and 11 on my defense. Our offensive coordinator is terrible. He gets half of his plays off of Madden rookie mode. I mean, the guy is no good. In our offensive line, it's like Obama's immigration policy. Let everybody through. Do we have a chance next week? No, we don't. We're 0-8. We're not good at football. I got 3 white receivers. Our red zone defense is like Oprah. Like, you get a touchdown, you get a touchdown, you get a touchdown. Our quarterback, look at the playbook. We put in plays for Peyton Manning. He plays like Cooper Manning. I mean, the guy's just not good at football. No credit to the other team, okay? The other team is awful. We tried to recruit bigger, better players to come play for us, but they went to good schools. I put in the game plan. These kids can't execute. Third down, terrible. I know we need better players. I get it. We can't win with the product we got in the field here. Like, I'm down to Rick Pitino some guys if I need to, but not at this level. I'm not going to jail for these kids. I mean, they're all talking in the locker room like, we're a team, we're in this together, no matter what happens, we're together. Like, not me, dude. I'm out of here. This team's terrible.
So, that is, what can I say there? That is very amusing for the journalists, but not so for the coach or the players. That is why media training is so important. In the modern game, a coach has to be involved in all aspects of the game, including the media. Well, this, in my opinion, one of the coaches that I believe gives a really good interview is Jurgen Klopp from Liverpool. He's honest, he talks freely, he's ready to give an interview. More recently, I did notice that he gets irritated when asked stupid questions. And that was against the game, that was when they lost against Man City about a week or so ago. I saw him feeling, and also there's sometimes a language barrier. So journalists might ask a question that's slightly encrypted, so they don't quite understand what's going on there. So let's get on to the next slide, which is what school sport is up against. What happens when we call a newspaper? Well, the first thing they say is school sport doesn't sell newspapers. It is especially relevant today when there's so much competition and sales are so important for newspapers. Journalists must be aware of who their target market is and what they want. And here I refer to both print and electronic. If the listeners and viewers are not interested, they just switch channels. What social media has done for the millennials and the Generation Zs, who are now those with the buying power, they have introduced people have very short time span. So you've got to tell them quickly. Everything's got to be quick and on the run, and we have to adapt to suit that sort of lifestyle. Then we also get told there's a multitude of sports. If we do this for you, then everybody wants us to do it for them. There are 25,000 schools in South Africa, of which 23,000 are public schools, and they all cater for 12 million learners. That actually equates to 500 learners for every school, but we know that that's not correct because there's a lot of schools out there with well over 1,000 pupils in there. Now, I Googled this morning, but I'm not quite sure if these are still the right stats, but there are 31 Olympic sports and sporting codes in South Africa. There must be between 50 and 100. So that is a lot for the media have to manage. Now, professional sports always gets guaranteed exposure, which means the media follow them all the time. But it's up to us PR companies, the coaches, and the schools to drive school exposure, as well as exposure for what we refer to as the minor sports or the fringe sports. And we know we've got quite a few of them on the webinar today. You know, many of the organizations are cutting down on journalists, meaning there are fewer journalists reporting of a lot of sport, and it's physically impossible for them to do it. So in a nutshell, where does that place us? Unless you coach, play, or are a professional team, athlete, national team, you've probably struggled to attract consistent media attention for your school players or athletes. And yes, I think you can all relate to that. But I know what you're all saying. You're all saying out there, oh, but that's not my job. Really, I've got so much on my plate. I don't want to have to worry about that as well. So now we've discussed the negative news. But you know what? There's a lot of positive news out there, especially in today's age. And we are very lucky for that. So there's always, the journalists always want to follow sport development. You need to understand that there are opportunities in abundance out there, but it's up to you to go and find them. All sports journalists, no matter which organization, they keep abreast with what's going on in development, so that they can understand what to expect in the future. So we need to keep them updated. A good media story will always get media interest. It's in today's age, it's all about content, content, content. Everyone is looking for a great content provider, which is where we at Intune have specialized. This brings me to an area which I believe that it's community media, and I believe that sport, school sport, and fringe sporting associations should make a lot of use of. You must never underestimate the power of the community media. I don't know if you are aware, but there are 200 community radio licenses issued currently, 4 community TV licenses, and 100 print licenses. Now, I've been in the game for many years, so I know that this has decreased a lot over the last 10 years, but that's a lot, and that's where you can make use of things. You know, they want to know what's going on in your area. You must exploit those avenues. But what's even more exciting is the mushrooming of online and social media. I know that it can cause almost analysis paralysis. Oh my goodness, which ones do we use? But that's where your digital agency comes on, and that's where we advise you. This is where we suggest you, and you go. But this is where everything is moving. So what exactly am I trying to say here? What I'm saying is, why don't you change your mindset? You know what they say, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And we can look at simple little things in your everyday life. If you introduce something and you endorse it and you start making it, you talk about it all the time, you imprint it in your brain, and it becomes natural. You know, there's a brilliant book written by John Kehoe called Mind Power. Oh, and by the way, we've put a link up at the end of the webinar for you to have a look at this. And he talks about the fact that we are all just energy. The whole universe is connected. We are all connected through energy. And what you think and what you believe, you put out there, and it is attracted to you, and that's what it becomes. So think positive and think differently, and things will change. You know, in these COVID times, people are very anxious, and there's a lot of depression. And psychologists saying, go out there, make yourself some positive affirmations, and repeat it numerous times every day. And it will make you feel better. So it's all about the story out there. We have discussed changing the mindset, viewing the media differently, looking for opportunities, and now we come down to what it's all about, the actual interview. Every single one of you coaches out there has a unique story. You are all different. And you know what? You've got a wonderful story to tell. And the media want these stories. An interesting story will be interesting to the media. But you've got to also remember here, there's a lot of you out there, a lot of different coaches, a lot of different sports. So you got to make your story. You've got to be a good storyteller as well. And the public also want to hear about your fantastic stories. The Joe blogs out there, they want to hear what you've got to say. You know, I know a lot of you out there are very good at putting your match reports out, but they want more than that. They want a good story. You know, we've got a lot of journalists on our webinar today as well. And some of them have approached us and said they also want to tell coaches from their perspective what they want. So that is something to look forward to coming up. But we know how you're all feeling at the moment. Yep. It creates anxiety and nervousness. We know, oh, people are very scared of the media. But there have been, and we know about this, we've had experience. There have been many times when we set up interviews, the coach is lined up, the radio station is ready, the print journalist is ready, the time is set up, it's confirmed, everything in writing. And guess what? The coach switches his phone off at the most critical stage. We've even had this on television. Everything is set up. We're all at the TV station, sitting there at the SABC, waiting. I'll be there in 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes. Guess what? The interview time has come and gone, and the person's phone is off. Days later, we get it, oh, too much traffic, my phone went dead. Now, that just irritates everyone, especially the journalist. It's a great opportunity missed. We have to work so hard for our sponsors to get the media exposure for school sport at the best of times, and then this happens. And it just irritates the sponsors. And it's also a strike against your name for the future. You become known as unreliable. So what we are saying is, don't be afraid to tell your story. Let your personality shine through. We hear a lot of those cliche words like fake news. You know, fake news is the big word at the moment. In these COVID times, it really is horrible, because there's a lot of people out there that intentionally put out bad news or fake news on Corona to see. It's like we get to know that it's like a joke for them, and they want to see how fast it can trend. And the worse the news, the more it trends. So that's not good. Scoops, media, coaches will come to us and say, all journalists want is a scoop, and they'll do anything to say anything. But in school sport, that doesn't apply. Yes, they might want the story first, but they don't go and make up stories on school sport. You don't have to worry about that. Yeah, we've heard these stories. Incorrect facts. A coach might come and say, yeah, we did the interview, but guess what? The facts didn't come out correctly. But you can ensure that this doesn't happen by recapping important facts at the end of an interview. Journalists do not like to be asked to share their story before publication. So we have been asked that as well. Don't do that. It just irritates them. You can always ask for another interview where you can give the correct facts and even elaborate a little bit more. And there we are. You're getting 2 stories, and that's extra exposure. Then let's look at a little bit of controversy. We've also had coaches coming to say the interview didn't go that well. The journalist wasn't asking the right questions. They wanted to know more about what was happening off the field than on the field. This happens when there's a little bit of something in the media, like a little bit age cheating or something like that. What are your feelings? And they don't really, or it doesn't even apply to them. So, but we can counteract that as well with careful rephrasing. That is where media training comes in as well. Learn to steer the conversation to a more comfortable one. Coaches can also create their own controversy, which we've just heard about. And they go on about the school and how awful they are, and the parents and the nailing of the players, always on the moan, complaining about everything. I have to be honest, very often coaches are when the media talk amongst themselves, they say, oh, you know, the coaches always complain, they're always moaning, nothing's ever good enough. And they get to know which coaches they like to interview and which coaches they don't. So be a positive coach out there. Bringing the school or the club into disrepute, this doesn't happen often, but we have come across it, and that's more related to incorrect facts and controversy. So this is something that we can handle. And the answer, you can be collaborative. Share with the reporter. Ask to share with the reporter to get to know him a little bit more and say, this is what I'd like you to ask. You can do that. It's school sport. Hey, journalists don't mind. And always remember this, a good interview will give you the edge and more interviews will follow. Also, elaborate. Elaborate. We want to tell a story. It's the age of telling stories. Want to tell us more. So a yes, no answer won't cut it. Now I'm about to show you an interview of that. You can also go to your players and speak to your players and say, okay, fine, tell me more. Do a little bit of research on them. What is your life about? Where do you come from? What story would you like me to tell the media? Speak to your other coaches. They might give you ideas before an interview. Yes, talk about this. Bring in a bit of humor, You're dealing with youngsters. There must have been plenty of amusing things that have happened all the time involving youngsters. Now, with our tournaments, especially the ones where we got to know the kids so well and we took them overseas, there was always the comedian in the team that added humor to everything. So stories, that is what it's all about. Now, this brings me on to my next example. I want you all to have a listen to this.
How's that NFL football feel? I'm not trying to bait you to make a decision. I just want to know how that felt. It's different than a college football. It needs to be broken a little bit. Yeah. All right. A lot more. Well, you can do that your rookie year. Wait, are we not going to get along here if I do this? I want to make sure. Yeah, we can do this. Okay, all right. We can do it. You don't have to make a decision. Are you having fun with this at all? I'm having a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun. I couldn't tell. Oh, no, don't worry. I'm having a lot of fun. Okay, well, let me try this again. Hey, what did you think of that NFL football? Oakland Raiders draft you, let's say. Just hypothetical. Well, I heard what Russ said over the phone, saying that he would, he's with the Yankees, so he'd have to play for, the Giants or the Jets to be able to do it. Yeah. If the Raiders drafted you, yes, would that change anything about trying to play both? In my head, I would love, like I already said, I would love to play both. I think, that's just up to, that'd be up to, the Raiders and the A's. Who do you think would have a bigger problem? The Raiders, probably. Really? Yeah, I think. John Gruden likes you, by the way. I appreciate that. Yeah. Have you talked? have you talked to John Gruden? I have not talked to John Gruden. Okay. I've never met him, actually. Paul, bring out John Gruden here. Yeah, hello to John Gruden. I was like, whoa. What would you do if he came out? Probably dap him up, give him a hug. That's it? That's it? Keep it cordial. Are you going to the Combine? I don't know. Well, wait. Dad, is he going to the Combine? No comment. Dad had no comment there. Pro day? I mean, that's after the Combine. Yeah, you're going to do a pro day? Yeah? Yeah. I guess if you want to say yeah, I guess yeah. Yeah. It's okay. You can have a pro day.
But instead
that would imply that I was going to play football.
Okay. So you're going to have a pro day? When do you report for the Oakland A's?
February 15th.
Oh, you knew that. Okay. So you're ready to go to do that. Wait, are you going to spring training?
I don't know.
Wait, you don't know? Dad, is he going to spring training? Another no comment here. You know these microphones are on right now.
Yeah, I know.
I'm just saying. All right. How tough is it that you're doing this with Gatorade, but you know every place you go is going to ask you the same questions?
I'm getting pretty good at answering, these questions.
No, you're not answering them.
Well, exactly.
You're shaking me off here.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I feel like I'm trying to tackle you.
No, yeah, everybody keeps asking the same questions.
Yeah.
But, they'll soon be answered. So.
And you know what? How long was it before I brought up the following? I didn't ask about his height.
11 minutes in, you didn't bring it up.
So that's got to be a record, right?
I was told you were going to be pretty harsh, so.
Harsh?
Yeah, so.
No, I'm just straight. I'm just honest.
I like that.
Well, I'm coming right at you.
I like that.
Yeah, that's it.
No doubt.
So your official height and weight?
I don't know the official. I don't wake up and just put it, measure myself.
Wait, have you been measured before?
The last I recall was my freshman year at A&M.
Okay.
It's 5'10".
Have you grown since then?
Low key, I think so.
Little bit. Yeah. All right. So you're under 6 feet.
For sure.
You look about size. Russell Wilson was in here, and I'm in your corner. Like when I hear these scouts say, "Well, you got to be a certain height and all that stuff," I just want to know if you know football, love football. So Oklahoma's linemen are as big as the NFL linemen.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
I don't get the whole nobody can see over offensive line. So
yeah, you seem to do okay.
Yeah.
Breeze did okay.
Yeah, he did.
Baker Mayfield?
He's still doing okay.
Yeah, he's still doing okay.
Yeah.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV.
So there you have it. That is a good example of a yes-no interview. And that is where media training prior to any form of interview is a really good idea. So we thought we'd add a little bit of fun there.
Or download the Dan Patrick Show app.
So now let's get on to questions. Now, when you're first interviewed in the media, it's always the same questions that you will be asked. As you get more media savvy, so the topics will change and the questions will change. But by then you got a lot more confidence in that. So when we always set up a first interview, it's always, where did it begin, your qualifications, talking a bit more about your team, the sport and your life, your goals, your mentor, your training, your balance. And what's happening a lot in this country is, where are the challenges? We've got a lot of poverty in the country, and teams are made up with people, with kids that come from a more affluent background to a very poor background. And we know that you coaches deal with a lot of different challenges out there. So the media always ask about the challenges that you're actually confronted with. So now we've looked at all of that. How do you, as a coach, get started? Now you've listened to me, and you might be saying, okay, fine, I want to change my mindset. Okay, yes, I agree, the media is right. But now where do I go? How do I start? Well, in this world, in the world now, we are all very, very lucky because we've got huge a number of outlets, and we can experiment. So it starts with social media. You've got all sorts of platforms, the Facebook, YouTubes, TikToks. That's just even a couple of them. It starts a lot. So you'll sit there they are all, you put your story on the platform, choose your platform and start to tell your story. Now, here at Intune, that's what we do. We put all these social strategies together and we help you select which one is more relevant to you. What's so nice about it is you are in control. You can tell your story as you want it to be told. You can start creating awareness for yourself, promoting yourself. And when you start, you know, you've got to start from somewhere. So it's pretty, so you start from small and you build up and eventually you get a name for yourself. And even the media sometimes might actually look for you. So, and then there's videos. How about making videos? You're all in sport, which is visual. So you are so lucky. We also put these together. And what is so nice is in social media, nothing has to be perfect. You don't have to have a perfect video. You can take the video yourself. You don't have to bring in a whole production company and do it. You can do it yourself. And guess what? You can put it up, say, it's not really relevant. And guess what? You can take it down again. And you can experiment and you can practice. But you can't actually do this with the mainstream. And you know what else is such fun? You can get your players to start getting into this interviewing as well. Start them young. They're a lot freer in talking to you than they are to a stranger. You know, I spoke just now about, they don't have to be long, the short attention span. A 1-minute interview with a player, or a 1-minute interview or a 1-minute something that a player has said that you find amusing that you can put up. So start doing this all yourselves. But the important thing is just be out there. And that's where it all starts. Now let's get local. Now, we've seen 2 interviews, and this is the last interview that I'm going to share with you. I'm going to share something that we did, and it's a year old. It's from last year. It involves Itumeleng Kune, who is a current player, and Amanda Dlamini, who is a past player. Now, there's a reason I'm going to be showing this to you, and that is because when you listen to it, you'll say, oh, but that's negative. It's talking negative about female sport. But it's talking about the message. It's the sponsor's message. The sponsor's getting into women's sport, and they want people to know it. So this is, and here I'm talking about when you are interviewed, you must make sure that the messaging is correct. So let's just have a listen to this.
Meanwhile, the Danone Nations Cup campaign selected young footballers to compete in the Danone Nations Cup Soccer World Finals. The tournament keeps on playing the major role in the development of amateur players.
We introduced a girls tournament, which is something that is needed because Banyana is making the country proud in the World Cup, and we need more of the players that will play in the next generation.
Former Banyana player Amanda Dlamini says the young players need to learn from their own female footballers.
I had an opportunity to introduce myself to some of the girls, and they were like, oh no, but we don't know who you are. And for me, it's an issue because we need to start showing them that there are role models out there that play the sports that just look like them. Because if you ask some of the girls, they say Cristiano Ronaldo is their role model, Messi is their role model, but we have Janine van Wyk, you have Thembi Kgatlana at the World Cup currently, who I think we should remind them that there are girls that actually play football.
This campaign draws huge crowds every year. The players will leave on the 10th September until the 12th October 2019. Prudence Makubalo, SABC News, Johannesburg. Meanwhile, the Danone Nations Cup.
So, there you have it. Sorry about that, little glitches. As this is our first webinar, we'll get more into it when we get more in out there. But there's something that I want to mention about Amanda Dlamini. That was an excellent interview by her specifically. Now, the more you can be interviewed, the more successful you are at that, the more you can talk fluently and get yourself out there, the more money you can make as well. She makes a fortune on endorsements. She's given up the sport. She's now on Super Sport. And she has lots of endorsements out there. So you can make a lot of money by getting into the media and putting yourself out there. So the time is running out now, and we are running half an hour late, for which we apologize. And we want you to get on with your Saturday's program. So I here have just touched the surface on the topic of media exposure. Just the surface. There's many facets to profiling and promoting media exposure. Something that doesn't come naturally to coaches. You know, they sit there and they say, my job is on the field, especially school coaches, because you're looking after the under 9s, the under 10s, the under 12s, under 15s, and every age group you teach in a different way. So I know that your time is made up with that. So let's get on to the last slide. How can we as Intune help you? Well, we're suggesting to everybody, get yourself, and it doesn't have to be a big budget, a small budget. Media training, number 1. Promote your sport at the school through social media, compiling videos, and writing press release. We can write the press release, send them out. We've got extensive media lists. We've got great relationships with all the media. So I would like to now switch on my video. Start video. I hope you can all see me. Right, so that brings an end to me. Now, what I want to say to all of you that are watching here, what have you done in this time of Corona to keep your players motivated? What have you done to keep yourself occupied? What have you done? What experiences have you had during this lockdown? Why don't you share it to us in the chat box and let us know, and perhaps we can chat to it a little bit further on. So that's it from me, and I'm going to hand you back to Shawn to finish off this webinar.
Okay. Thank you, Kassey. Just a bit just to finish off, where to from now. We are hosting another webinar in 2 weeks' time. We'll have as speakers. We're going to have Muhammad Manib Ali. He's a guest speaker from Pakistan. He's a sports scientist. Now, one of the reasons why we asked you the question up front as to what sports you guys coach or what sports you're involved in, he will talk across all platforms. So he actually wanted to know from us, where do all the coaches come from, and what sports do they take part in? So, for example, we've got gymnastics, we've got baseball, we've got a whole lot of different sports that he can actually talk about. So he will make his presentation very generic and then give examples of each kind of sport that we've approached. The next speaker will be Claire Blanche. She's the Western Province Women's and Girls Pipeline Framework Coach. She coaches she's in charge of everything Western Province cricket, from 6-year-old all the way up to the actual women's side. She's the women's coach itself. She will be talking about women's cricket, but she'll be talking about women's sport in general. And then the final one will be Hannes Ninaba. A lot of you guys know Hannes for his School of Rugby and School of Cricket websites. But he'll be talking more about his DigiTV channel, because people think that it's just that people just want to stream live rugby and live cricket. But he'll be talking about his platform that can stream other sports too. But more importantly than that, it can be used as a sales or a marketing system for school plays, for the educational side of it, for a lot of other things. So it's not all about the sport that DigiCampus is out there for. It's about every single kind of everything that the school can actually offer. just to re-go through, you'll find us on Twitter, Kassey and I individually on Twitter. You'll find Kassey, Greg and I on YouTube. Well, the YouTube channel will be the Intune YouTube channel. Facebook, you'll find the Intune Facebook channel. I've already shared this link below with where to get through to the services and to be able to contact us afterwards. That link has been sent to you, but it'll also be emailed to you. And then just go through a couple of the books that have been mentioned. Again, that's Legacy by James Kerr, Mindset by Carol, Winning with Relationships by Justin Cohen. And then Kassey just mentioned, she wanted to mention 2 books that she finds very interesting. One is the Media Training Bible, which helps you with interviews and what to do when you approach an interview and how to deal with interview and different ideas around media. And the last one is the Mind Power that Kassey mentioned. It's running quite late, so I'm not sure if anybody wants to ask any more questions. We've already been asked a lot of questions which we've dealt with, or we've passed on to Greg to talk about. If you want to ask more questions, you can send it to us. We'll leave the chat box open. You can ask us the questions. Kassey and I will sit here and wait, and if there's a couple of questions we can deal with quickly now, we'll deal with those questions. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'm so sorry once again that we've gone way past our allocated time. I hope you all enjoyed it. If there are suggestions for future webinars, future chats, we will do future chats with you. I've also spoken to people like John McGrath, who is a high performance coach. He deals with the mind power. He deals with the mind side of sport. He can help you out also in your personal life. We penciled him in so far for the 8th of August, but we can reconfirm that. Once again, going back to a question that came up earlier on with like more aggressive kind of coaches, or let's say passionate coaches, the difference between a passionate and the more aggressive kind of coach. We have got Rob Taylor from Bay FM, who will talk about his big passion is talking about helping people sort out bullying at the schools, because there's a fine line between being a bully or just a passionate coach. How do you approach that line? How do you look past that line? And to talk about the differences in people. So I'll try and get John Rob maybe to talk on that same one with John, because that'll be quite an interesting talk. So if you've got any questions, Kassey and I are here. Otherwise, just post them on the chat box and we'll attend to them. Or we will send an email during the week with replays of today's webinar. Plus, you can post your questions there and we can get back to you at a later stage. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Hi, Marty. You can definitely share this program, the replays with your coaches. If you want more one-on-one coaching, you can fill in that form that we sent. Let me just resend it again, where the link to the form, just so you can fill it in and we can try and organize more one-on-ones, whichever coach you want to talk to, and that applies to future coaches in future webinars. Thank you, everybody, for attending. We've actually really enjoyed today and can't wait to do the next one.
Are you okay? Are you feeling better?